LoveLore Library. Chapter 49. After buying the books, Xinyu bid farewell to Jiang Huiqing and He Qingyu. Jiang Huiqing was still embarrassed by what happened just now, so he didn't say anything to persuade Xinyu to stay. They arranged to meet again in the suburbs of the capital and then parted ways. After returning, Shang Junlin placed the books neatly on the desk. After the awkward moment, Xinyu also became curious about these books. He casually took a book, sat on the soft couch, and opened it. "Let me see what your majesty intends to learn from these books." Shang Junlin also took a book and sat beside Xinyu. "Naturally, I want to learn how the emperor asked the noble to sleep with him every night." Cough, cough. Xinyu choked on his own saliva. Yes, the books were mixed with bold conjectures. The lives of the noble and the emperor were colorful. Xinyu reasonably suspected that the reason why the novels were so popular was related to these colorful lives. "Be careful, noble." Shang Junlin patted Xinyu's back. Xinyu couldn't sit still anymore. He grabbed the book from Shang Junlin's hand and put it aside. "Your Majesty, you should know that the stories in the books are all fake. I can't have dangerous thoughts." The temperature in the room was high. Xinyu felt that his neck was a little itchy, so he reached out to scratch it. Shang Junlin suddenly grabbed Xinyu's hand, and his eyes gradually darkened. "What's wrong? You're bleeding." Shang Junlin bit the lower part of Xinyu's neck. As Xinyu moved, the collar slid down slightly, revealing a mottled area. After a period of time, the red color became more and more shocking. Among the red marks, several obvious wounds were exposed, and blood was oozing out. Shang Junlin grabbed Xinyu's hand with one hand and reached out to Xinyu's neck with the other hand. He gently touched it. "Does it hurt? Look at what your majesty has done." Xinyu pretended to be angry and glanced at him. "It's my fault." Shang Junlin took the initiative to admit his mistake. Looking at Xinyu, who was surrounded by young people, and seeing Xinyu talking to those young people with a smile, Shang Junlin couldn't help but feel a burst of anger. He wanted Xinyu to only smile at him, and all the emotions were caused by him. In the face of millions of enemy troops, Xinyu's words had caused their strategy to collapse. Their proud self-control was even more vulnerable. "Your Majesty, you don't have to apologize." Xinyu looked at Shang Junlin's slightly angry eyes and said, "Your Majesty, please help me apply the medicine." The medicine was prepared in advance. Shang Junlin took the ointment commonly used in Xinyu Meridian and applied it little by little. He applied it to the wound. The cooling ointment quickly resolved the discomfort of the wound. The wound on his neck looked scary, but it didn't hurt that much. He didn't feel anything after applying the ointment. After playing for a day, the palace sent a new batch of memorials. Shang Junlin was busy with official business, so Xinyu didn't want to disturb him and strolled out. Eunuch Meng was waiting in the room. Xinyu called Mu Shi over. "How did it go?" "Young master, don't worry. It's all done." Mu Shi went out because she received Xinyu's orders. She was to contact the people in the farmstead and pass on Xinyu's orders to them. She also arranged to go to the farmstead while she was at it. "By the way, young master, this servant met Imperial Physician Gu on the street today." Mu Shi thought of another matter and said, "Imperial Physician Gu asked this servant to bring the new medicine to young master." Imperial Physician Gu's home was outside the palace, so it was normal to meet him. Xinyu didn't take it to heart. Imperial Physician Gu took Gu Huai home and simply tidied up the courtyard. Gu Huai suddenly asked, "Brother, what kind of person is Shen Guijun? Why are you asking this?" Imperial Physician Gu watered the herbs that were growing well. "I'm very curious." Gu Huai squatted beside Imperial Physician Gu. "Brother, even Mu Xiao is busy with Shen Guijun's matter. He must be a very good person. Guijun is indeed a very good person. If there's a chance in the future, I'll take you to meet him. Late at night, Gu Huai quietly went out of the room. The man in black who had been waiting outside knelt down and said, "Master." Gu Huai asked, "How's the investigation going?" The man in black replying to Master, "This subordinate has received accurate information. His Majesty and Guijun are now outside the palace. This subordinate is incompetent and couldn't find their specific residence." Gu Huai said, "It's not your fault. If you could easily find out, he wouldn't be Shang Junlin." The man in black said, "This subordinate also found out that there's some movement on a mountain in the suburbs of the capital recently." Gu Huai said, "Tell me the specific location." The man in black said, "Tsangchi Mountain." Tsangchi Mountain. Gu Huai lowered his eyes and pondered. No matter whether the two planned to go to Tsangchi Mountain or not, he had to go and take a look. Shang Junlin finished dealing with the government affairs for the day and handed over the matter of Prince Yu to Fong Darren. Fong Darren was stunned when he received the imperial edict. He originally wanted His Majesty to teach Prince Yu a lesson, but he didn't expect that Prince Yu's matter would fall on his head. "No. Isn't it very good?" Miss Fong said while eating melon seeds. "His Majesty gave this matter to you, which means that in His Majesty's eyes, Prince Yu is nothing at all. You can deal with him however you want." But Fong Darren was still a little worried. His Majesty doesn't care. What is father worried about? If it's really as father thinks, dealing with Prince Yu's matter won't fall on father's head. You're right. It's father who is stunned. If there was a problem, His Majesty would definitely remind him. Since the matter was handed over to him, he must do it beautifully. Fong Darren went to deal with Prince Yu's matter energetically. Miss Fong wanted to see the two young masters who helped her out of the Yingxing Tower that day, so she found Jiang Huiqing. Jiang Huiqing happened to be looking for an opportunity to apologize to Xin Yu in person. The two hit it off and decided to meet Xin Yu together. Fortunately, before they parted last time, Xin Yu left Jiang Huiqing away to find him. It didn't take them much effort to contact Xin Yu. When Mu Shi told Xin Yu the news, Xin Yu was a little surprised. Xin Yu put down the pen in his hand. Why did they come together? It should be that Miss Fong couldn't find a way to contact us, so she found Jiang Huiqing through the Yingxing Tower, Shang Junlin said. It didn't take much effort to find out that they ate together that day. Your Majesty, are we going to meet her? If a Yu wants to go, we'll go. Shang Junlin gave the choice to Xin Yu. Then let's meet. Xin Yu was a little interested in Miss Fong. The meeting place was still set at the Yingxing Tower. This time, to discuss business, they chose a private room where they wouldn't be disturbed. When Xin Yu and Shang Junlin arrived, Jiang Huiqing had already chatted with Miss Fong for a while. For convenience, Miss Fong wore neutral clothes today. Her makeup was also different from last time. She looked very valiant. Xin Yu and Shang Junlin sat down together. Jiang Huiqing was about to say something, but he swallowed it silently. He'd better wait. I invited you without permission to thank the two young masters for helping me out last time. I hope you won't blame me. Miss Fong spoke first. It's nothing. You don't have to thank me. Xin Yu said. The waiter quietly left after serving the dishes. Jiang Huiqing was just introducing Miss Fong. He knew that Miss Fong had something to discuss with Xin Yu and Shang Junlin, so he didn't stay for long and said goodbye. Young Master Yu, may I have a word with you? Shang Junlin's eyes turned to Jiang Huiqing. Feeling the cold gaze on him, Jiang Huiqing wanted to cry. He really didn't do it on purpose last time. Wasn't that why he came to apologize? Xin Yu patted Shang Junlin's arm with amusement, stood up, and walked to the side with Jiang Huiqing. This time, besides being entrusted by Miss Fong, I also want to apologize to young Master Yu in person. Last time, I really didn't know you were, cough cough. I'm really sorry to disturb you. Jiang Huiqing struggled to finish his words under the unkind gaze. Shen Yu secretly said, fortunately, you came. Otherwise, I don't know how long Shang Junlin will continue. But he said, so it's because of this. We didn't pay attention. You don't have to apologize to me for this. Jiang Huiqing didn't expect Shen Yu to be so calm about this kind of thing. He couldn't help but blush. It's our fault. I wish you two love each other until your hair turns white. Halfway through his words, Jiang Huiqing accidentally saw the red mark on Shen Yu's neck. He didn't eat pork, but he had seen pigs run. He suddenly stopped. After hurriedly saying a few auspicious words, Jiang Huiqing left as if he was escaping. Shen Yu, who had never seen Jiang Huiqing so energetic, couldn't help but laugh. Shen Yu returned to Shang Junlin's side and sat down. Shang Junlin's attention was always on him. He wanted to ask what Jiang Huiqing said to make Shen Yu laugh. But because Miss Fong was present, he didn't ask. Commoner Fong Jie greets your Majesty and your Highness. No need to be so polite. How did you guess our identity? Shen Yu was curious. There are only a few people who dare to not be afraid of the nobility. You two really didn't feel any fear because of the identity of the Prince of Yu. Presumably, your identity is not lower than the Prince of Yu. Looking at your close relationship, I can roughly guess your identity. Fong Jie answered in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Oh. Shen Yu looked up with interest. Then how did Miss Fong determine our identity? Because His Majesty gave the matter of the Prince of Yu to my father. Miss Fong came to His Majesty and me not just to thank us in person, right? This commoner wants a chance. Fong Jie knelt down. This commoner wants a chance to compete fairly with men. Shang Junlin held Shen Yu's wrist and didn't say anything. In the silence, Fong Jie opened her mouth again. This commoner knows that this commoner's request may be a bit outrageous. But this commoner believes that there are definitely many women in the world like this commoner. Their ambition is to rule the world, and not to stay in the harem. Shang Junlin's tone was very slow. Do you know that it is very difficult to achieve this? This commoner knows. But this commoner wants to fight with fate for myself and for the many women in the world who have the same ambition as this commoner. Fong Jie's face was resolute as she said this. Her eyes were shining brightly. Shen Yu poked Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin said, I can give you this opportunity. Whether you can seize it or not depends on you. Thank you, Your Majesty. What does Your Majesty think Fong Jie will do? Shen Yu asked after returning to the small courtyard. You will know when you see it. The first obstacle is probably Fong Darren. I don't know how Fong Darren will react when he finds out that his daughter went to His Majesty. Shen Yu said. This is something that the Fong family needs to worry about. Shang Junlin was obviously more concerned about another matter. He hugged the youth from behind and rubbed the tip of his nose against the side of the youth's neck. First, tell me what Jiang Huiqing said to you. Shen Yu found that Shang Junlin was very obsessed with his neck recently. He often wanted to leave a mark on it. What does Your Majesty think he said to me? Shen Yu dodged to the side and was caught by the man. What did he say to make Your Majesty smile so happily? Chapter 50. Of course it's. Shen Yu deliberately paused. I wish that Your Majesty and I will be together for 100 years. What else does Your Majesty think it is? Shen Yu's voice was full of ridicule. Shang Junlin heard it and immediately felt his teeth itch. Considering that the wound on Shin Yu's neck had not healed, Shang Junlin only rubbed it lightly. Guijun, please speak properly. Oh, right, there's one more thing. He came to apologize to me, Shin Yu added. Apologize? Jiang Huiqing did something to hurt you. Shang Junlin rested his head on Shin Yu's shoulder. When he spoke, his warm breath sprayed onto Shin Yu's neck. It's because of what happened last time. Did your Majesty forget? That day in a remote alley. I remember now, Shang Junlin interrupted Shin Yu. When he mentioned what happened that day, Shang Junlin's face flushed. He should apologize. What happened that day was because your Majesty didn't care about the occasion. Why did you ask someone else to apologize? Because he disturbed my time with Guijun, Shang Junlin muttered in a low voice. Shin Yu turned around in Shang Junlin's arms so that they were facing each other. He pointed at Shang Junlin's shoulder with his index finger. Your Majesty, don't you feel that there's something wrong with your state? What's wrong? Shang Junlin frowned. Isn't your Majesty too concerned about my matters? Shin Yu pointed out. A Yu is my Guijun and has a marriage contract with me. Is there anything wrong with me caring about a Yu? Shang Junlin tightened his arm around Shin Yu's waist. Shin Yu was speechless. At first glance, there was nothing wrong with what Shang Junlin said. But when he thought about it carefully, there was something wrong with it. Shang Junlin didn't give Shin Yu much time to think and continued, what do you think? Shin Yu opened his mouth and gave up thinking. Your Majesty is right. There's nothing wrong with that. Lord Fong has made some progress. Would you like to take a look? Shang Junlin knew when to stop and when to stop, so he changed the topic after getting the results he wanted. Shin Yu was surprised. Official Fong is so fast. It had only been a few days since Shang Junlin handed over the matter of Prince Yu to Official Fong. It seemed that Official Fong really loved his daughter dearly. Not only Lord Fong, but the other women as well. The family also intervened. Shang Junlin exerted force in his arms and picked Shin Yu up. Your Majesty, Shin Yu was caught off guard as his feet left the ground. Don't worry, I won't hurt Guijun. Shang Junlin carried Shin Yu to the soft couch and put her down. Next time your Majesty wants to do something, can you tell me first? I'll try my best. Shang Junlin sat down beside Shin Yu. Your Majesty said that there were other families involved. What's going on? Which families are involved? Shin Yu crossed her legs and leaned on Shang Junlin's shoulder. Aristocratic families value their reputation very much. Prince Yu's action has undoubtedly violated a big taboo of aristocratic families. Whether it is for the sake of their family's reputation or to express their attitude to me, they will spare no effort to take action. Shang Junlin adjusted her posture so that Shin Yu could lean more comfortably. Shin Yu let Shang Junlin do whatever he wanted. That's right. Most of the people who confronted Prince Yu that day are from aristocratic families. Prince Yu's goal was the families behind those women. If they were ordinary women, Prince Yu wouldn't bother to get to know them personally. What about those women? Shin Yu asked. Shang Junlin was puzzled. What's wrong? Shin Yu said, I just thought of another problem. Aristocratic families value their reputation. The behavior of those women is undoubtedly a disgrace to their families. If they encounter a more ruthless family, I'm afraid they won't let those women have a good end. Don't worry, Guijun. When I asked the Imperial Army to send them back, I already warned those families. Asking the Imperial Army to personally send those women back had already shown Shang Junlin's attitude. Anyone who was a little smarter wouldn't lay their hands on their daughters under such circumstances. Your Majesty is really thoughtful. Shin Yu rubbed Shang Junlin's shoulder. This time, Prince Yu won't be able to escape unscathed. Shin Yu didn't hide his disgust for Prince Yu. He rarely concealed his true feelings in front of Shang Junlin. The more he was like this, the deeper Shang Junlin liked him. What Shang Junlin liked was never the gentle and polite legitimate son of Duke Shinbei, who knew when to advance and when to retreat. Instead, he liked Shin Yu, who showed his true temperament in front of him. I can't take Prince Yu's life for the time being. But this time, he won't be able to return unscathed. Shang Junlin played with Shin Yu's fingers as if he was talking about an insignificant matter. With official Fong and Miss Yu's help, he won't have an easy time. Shin Yu didn't ask for the reason. Just like he had secrets that he couldn't tell Shang Junlin also had things that he couldn't say. That's true. With the cooperation of the aristocratic families, official Fong found a lot of interesting things. Shang Junlin took out a booklet and opened it for Shin Yu to see. Shin Yu lazily leaned on Shang Junlin's body and read the contents of the booklet while listening to him. Prince Yu has been playing dirty tricks these years. He buried a lot of spies in the capital. Official Fong took people to pull out these spies. Some of the families who were on good terms with Prince Yu also abandoned the rook to save the king after seeing the situation clearly. They unilaterally cut off all contact with Prince Yu. It seems that Prince Yu's many years of operation have been in vain. Shin Yu sighed. I don't care what he wants to do. In my place, he has to follow my rules. Official Fong's work was progressing very smoothly. It was as if someone was secretly handing him clues step by step. Fearing that there might be a trap, official Fong paid careful attention to it. He didn't find anything wrong, but he remembered this suspicious point. Prince Yu was imprisoned in the dark prison and lost all contact with the outside world. At this moment, he didn't know that his many years of arrangements in the capital were about to be destroyed by official Fong. The more information official Fong found, the more shocked he was. Finally, he couldn't sit still and personally asked to see Shang Junlin. Official Fong came to the small courtyard in the afternoon. Shin Yu was taking an afternoon nap. In order not to disturb him, Shang Junlin chose to meet official Fong outside. Official Fong first reported the progress during this period of time, and then pointed out the suspicious points he found. I think that there should be a force secretly handing over clues to me. You didn't find out who they are. Shang Junlin knocked on the table with his knuckles. I'm incompetent. Official Fong lowered his head in shame. Tell me. I tried to find clues to trace that force, but they hid too well. I couldn't find any traces at all. I even suspected that I was overthinking. But there shouldn't be such a coincidence in the world. Prince Yu has been operating in the capital for so many years, and he also had the help of the late emperor. If they could find out so easily, it would be the most suspicious thing. Shang Junlin also agreed with this point. He slowed down his knocking on the table. In addition, they have other plans. Did they do anything else? No. Shin Yu woke up from his sleep and heard the conversation between Shang Junlin and official Fong outside. The corners of his mouth curled up. If there was anyone in the world who knew about Prince Yu's forces, it would be Shin Yu. In his previous life, in order to help Prince Yu, he knew the distribution of some of Prince Yu's forces better than Prince Yu himself. Mu Shi. Young master, you're awake. Hearing the sound, Mu Shi walked in from outside. Shin Yu got dressed and got out of bed. Tomorrow, I'll let Her Majesty go to the country residence to play for a day. I'll go prepare now. Mu Shi understood the meaning behind Shin Yu's words. Before leaving the palace, Shin Yu instructed Mu Shi to do some things and gave her some letters. He asked her to find an opportunity to deliver the letters to the people in the country residence without arousing any suspicion. After leaving the palace, Shin Yu used the excuse that he wanted to be alone with Shang Junlin and did not bring the palace servants out to play. Mu Shi used the excuse that she wanted to buy things and meet her friends. She was only Shin Yu's servant and the hidden dragon guards would not pay too much attention to her. After confirming that there was no problem, Mushi let her guard down. At this time, Mushi secretly sent out the letters. There was not much important information in the letters. The real plan had already been deployed before entering the palace. Shin Yu was waiting for the perfect opportunity when official Fong thoroughly investigated Prince Yu. With the help of official Fong, Prince Yu's forces would be discovered in advance. Other than the fact that it would be too smooth, there would not be any suspicious points. This was because his people did not really participate in the plan and only revealed some clues. Now, it seemed that the plan was going smoothly. Well, remember to prepare the snacks that you mentioned to me last time. I will bring His Majesty to taste them. Shin Yu washed his face. Shang Junlin heard the noise and came in. Your Majesty, you are awake. His Majesty is busy with political affairs. Is there a minister outside? Shin Yu looked outside the door. It's official Fong. He has finished. He will go back by himself. Official Fong, who was left behind, stood in the courtyard with a blank face. Eunuch Meng smiled and walked forward. Official Fong, please go back. After thinking about it, Official Fong had finished what he wanted to say. There was no need to stay. Official Fong turned and left. Your Majesty, where are we going today? Shin Yu looked away and asked excitedly. To Tsangchi Mountain. Tsangchi Mountain. The mountain was located in the northern suburbs of the capital. The scenery was beautiful. Every year, many people invited their relatives and friends to go for a spring walk and enjoy the scenery. Tsangchi Mountain was not far from where they lived. After an hour, the carriage stopped. This time, they brought a few palace servants with them. The palace servants went to arrange a place to rest. Shin Yu and Shang Junlin walked and strolled. The sun was bright and the breeze was warm. Looking around, there were all kinds of flowers dotted in the green. Occasionally, a few young women walked by happily. They were more beautiful than the flowers. There were students gathered by the river, drinking and composing poems. Shin Yu saw Jiang Huiqing and He Qingyu. Considering Shang Junlin's mood, he did not go over. The two walked through the crowd together. Listening to the laughter around them, they were in a good mood. How nice it would be if I could be so comfortable every day. Shin Yu sighed. If Yu likes it, we will come again next time. Will it be too troublesome? After all, he was the emperor. This kind of thing that was easy for ordinary people to do was more than a little troublesome for them. If Shin Yu likes it, it doesn't matter if it is a little troublesome. Shang Junlin looked at the smile on Shin Yu's face and thought secretly. Be careful. A gust of wind came. Shang Junlin did not have time to think. He held Shin Yu and turned around. Ah, there were screams all around. Shin Yu saw a man in gray pass by quickly through Shang Junlin's shoulder. For some reason, Shin Yu's heart jumped. The hand on Shang Junlin's arm unconsciously tightened. Your Majesty, thinking that Shin Yu was frightened, Shang Junlin stroked his back and comforted him. Don't be afraid. Shin Yu calmed down, but he still could not ignore the palpitations in his heart. Who was that man? Why did he appear here? Chapter 51. No one knew where that person came from. After causing a panic in the crowd, he disappeared. Shin Yu calmed down for a while, barely suppressing the palpitations in his heart, and stood up from Shang Junlin's arms. You don't look well. Let's go back first. Shang Junlin looked at Shin Yu's pale face and said with heartache. Shin Yu had been well nourished in the palace. He hadn't looked so pale for a long time. The only time Shang Junlin remembered was when Shin Yu fainted after entering Yuzhang Palace. Your Majesty, I don't feel well. Shinyu leaned in Shang Junlin's arms and frowned. Shang Junlin wrapped Shinyu up without saying anything and walked back. Let's go back first. Shinyu nestled in the man's arms and didn't speak. He faintly felt out of breath and realized that there might be something wrong with his body. Shang Junlin moved quickly and carried Shinyu all the way to the carriage. Just as they were about to leave, Imperial Physician Gu walked out of the crowd. Your Majesty, it's Imperial Physician Gu. Eunuch Meng had sharp eyes and pulled Imperial Physician Gu over. There was a young man beside Imperial Physician Gu. Shinyu couldn't care less. His vision turned black, and his heart felt like it was being squeezed by a hand. Shinyu, who hadn't had a relapse for a long time, almost forgot how he felt when he had a relapse. Shang Junlin sat down with Shinyu in his arms. Imperial Physician Gu didn't dare to delay and stepped forward to take Shinyu's pulse. After a long time, Imperial Physician Gu released his hand and frowned. Someone caused your illness. Shang Junlin's eyes darkened. He remembered that Shinyu fainted for the first time in Yuzhang Palace because of this. After the incident, he had investigated the entire Yuzhang Palace. He had thought that nothing similar would happen again, but now it seemed that he had been too lenient. Imperial Physician Gu quickly wrote down a prescription and said as he wrote, Your Majesty, there is no need to be too worried. Your Majesty's body is in good condition now and there won't be any major problems. I have some medicine with me, but there are still some that Your Majesty needs to send someone to retrieve quickly. Shang Junlin ordered the hidden dragon guards to retrieve the medicine. Under Imperial Physician Gu's instructions, the palace servants built a tent that could shelter them from the wind. Shang Junlin carried Shinyu and walked inside. Imperial Physician Gu followed closely behind. Young Master. Eunuch Meng stopped the young man who was following behind Imperial Physician Gu into the tent. That's my younger brother. He can help me, Eunuch Meng. There's no need to worry. Imperial Physician Gu explained. Only then did Eunuch Meng let him in. Shinyu could vaguely feel the movements outside. He could feel Shang Junlin's worry and fear. He wanted to tell them that he was fine and not to worry, but he just opened his mouth and did not say anything. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Shang Junlin tucked Shinyu's hair behind her ear. It was not clear if he was talking to Shinyu or himself. Your Majesty, I need to perform acupuncture on Your Majesty. Imperial Physician Gu finished speaking and turned his head to order, Xiao Huai, take out the silver needles at the bottom right of the medicine box. Gu Huai took out the silver needles and brought them over. Shang Junlin placed Shinyu on the makeshift bed and said, Other than Imperial Physician Gu, the rest of you can leave first. Yes. Eunuch Meng led the servants away and pulled the young man who did not want to move. Gu Huai followed Eunuch Meng's pole and walked outside. He said softly, But my brother is inside. His Majesty keeps a close eye on Your Majesty. Your brother is the one who will perform acupuncture. There's no other way. Otherwise, your brother would have to come out with us. Eunuch Meng pulled the young man to the side. God bless, Your Majesty will be fine. Mu Shi could not control the anxiety in her heart. Why did Gongzi? Everything was fine before. These days, this servant has strictly followed Imperial Physician Gu's instructions and urged Gongzi to have a good rest. Why did he? Eunuch Meng was also anxious. His Majesty valued Gongzi more and more. If something happened to Gongzi, no, Gongzi must be blessed by the heavens. While the people outside were anxious, Shang Junlin inside could not control himself. He could not stand the sight of the person who was talking to him with a smile just now lying on the bed with a pale face and closed eyes. Because of the pain, he frowned even after he fainted. Silver needles were pierced one after another, causing Shinyu's fingers to curl up in pain. Shang Junlin sat at the side and held Shin Yu's hand. Is the trigger the same as the last time? Shang Junlin's voice was cold. He was really angry. Imperial Physician Gu gave an affirmative answer. Shang Junlin clenched his other hand tightly. When he found the person behind the scenes, he must make that person suffer a fate worse than death. He must pay back the pain Shin Yu suffered 100 times, 1,000 times. The acupuncture treatment was to stabilize Shin Yu's physical condition. After half an hour, Imperial Physician Gu put away the needles and said, "Now, the weather is cold. Your Majesty, please be careful not to let Gongzi catch a cold. After this, Gongzi's body may be weak for a period of time. I will adjust the prescription and supplement it with medicinal cuisine to help Gongzi recover. Even a healthy person would suffer a great loss when he fell ill, let alone a weak person. Without 2 or 3 months of careful recuperation, Shin Yu would not be able to recover to his previous state." Shang Junlin gathered Shin Yu's clothes and hugged him again. Feeling the warmth, Shin Yu instinctively leaned towards the source. Being approached by Shin Yu should be a happy thing. However, Shang Junlin could not feel happy at this moment. He lowered his head and kissed Shin Yu's forehead. Shang Junlin hugged him even tighter. Imperial Physician Gu put away the silver needles and did not continue to disturb them. "I will go and take a look at the medicine." As soon as they came out, the hidden dragon guards also rushed to retrieve the medicine. Mu Shi followed Imperial Physician Gu to decoct the medicine. In a fit of anger, Shang Junlin ordered the hidden dragon guards to seal off the entire Zhangqi mountain. Before they found out the identity of the person in gray, no one was allowed to leave. Some people were dissatisfied, but Shang Junlin was not in the mood to listen to them. He took down all the dissatisfied people and punished a few of them. The rest of them did not dare to speak anymore. Not long after, the Imperial Guards arrived. With the Imperial Guards, these people knew how serious the situation was and did not dare to make a fuss. It was not a good place to recuperate outside. Shang Junlin planned to bring Shin Yu back to the palace. Mu Shi came in with the decocted medicine. Imperial Physician Gu followed behind her. Behind them was a young man who was carrying a medicine box. "Your Majesty, you should find a place closer for Shin Yu to recuperate first. It would be better for him to return to the palace after 1 or 2 days." Imperial Physician Gu heard Shang Junlin's plan to return to the palace and gave his suggestion. It would be better for Shin Yu's body to be less bumpy. It would take more than half a day to travel from Zhangqi Mountain to the palace. To be safe, they could not travel too fast. It would take longer. Shang Junlin was touched by Imperial Physician Gu's last sentence. He ordered eunuch Meng, "Find a manor nearby. I will bring Shin Yu to stay there for a few days. Give me the medicine." Seeing Mu Shi coming over with the medicine, Shang Junlin reached out to take it. Thinking of Shin Yu's plan, Mu Shi boldly said, "Your Majesty, the manor that Shin Yu used to live in is not far from here. Why don't Your Majesty take Shin Yu there? Shin Yu has always wanted Your Majesty to see the place he likes." "How far is it?" Shang Junlin thought of Shin Yu before they left the palace. He described the interesting things that happened in the manor when he was young. His eyes darkened. They had originally planned to go there in 2 days. "We can get there in less than half an hour." It was indeed not far. Instead of looking for a completely unfamiliar place, it was better to go to Shin Yu's manor. Shang Junlin fed the medicine to Shin Yu. When the spoon reached his mouth, the unconscious young man curled his lips and moved his head to the side. After feeding him several times, Shin Yu did not cooperate. The last time, he even spilled the medicine on Shang Junlin's clothes. Mu Shi trembled with fear as she watched from the side. She wanted to say that she would do it herself several times, but under Shang Junlin's gaze, she swallowed the words back down. Maybe the medicine this time is bitter. Imperial Physician Gu explained. All of you can leave first. Shang Junlin ordered. After everyone left, Shang Junlin picked up the bowl of medicine and drank a mouthful without changing his expression. He leaned over and sucked on Shen Yu's lips, passing the medicine bit by bit. Shen Yu was firmly imprisoned in Shang Junlin's arms. He could not escape and could only swallow the bitter medicine unwillingly. Under Shang Junlin's strong force, the bowl of medicine was quickly emptied. Shen Yu was so bitter that his entire face was wrinkled. Shang Junlin smoothed the wrinkles on his forehead and laughed softly. You're still so restless even when you're asleep. The matter of Zhangqi Mountain was handed over to the Hidden Dragon Guards and the leader of the Imperial Guards. Shang Junlin brought Shen Yu and a group of palace servants to the manor. Imperial Physician Gu was also brought along. Because there were extra people, Imperial Physician Gu and Eunuch Meng sat in the same carriage. On the way, Eunuch Meng pretended to be curious and asked, why did Imperial Physician Gu come to Zhangqi Mountain? Xiao Huai said that he wanted to come. I thought that since I'm not busy recently, I can come and see if there are any medicinal herbs I want. Imperial Physician Gu pointed to the medicine box on the side. I found a lot of good medicine. Eunuch Meng glanced at the young man beside Imperial Physician Gu. The young man's sitting posture was proper and he could faintly see his dependence on Imperial Physician Gu. Gu Huai was at a loss at this moment. He did intend to meet Shang Junlin, but he never thought that it would be in this way. He did not want to involve Imperial Physician Gu. The moment he came to Zhangqi Mountain with Imperial Physician Gu, he gave up the idea of meeting Shang Junlin here. He could find another opportunity. There was only one Imperial Physician Gu. Even if there was a 1 in a million chance, he did not want Imperial Physician Gu to be in danger because of him. He ordered his people not to make a move. He did not know who injured Shen Guijun. At the same time, Gu Huai was also very glad. He did not rashly make a move to test the waters. With Shang Junlin's importance to Shen Yu, once he made a move, even if it was just for a chance to talk to Shang Junlin face to face, he could only choose to stand opposite the emperor of the Great Huan dynasty. Knowing that Shen Yu was coming, everything had been prepared in the manner. Shang Junlin carried Shen Yu all the way into the bedroom and put her down before coming out to deal with the matter. Your Majesty, it is a coincidence that Imperial Physician Gu appeared in Zhangqi Mountain. Eunuch Meng took advantage of the time in the carriage to ask Imperial Physician Gu some questions. And inform me as soon as there is any progress. In the evening, Mu Shi brought over the freshly brewed medicine. Shang Junlin took the medicine and walked into the bedroom. Mu Shi tactfully did not disturb him. Shen Yu had not woken up yet. Shang Junlin first scooped up a spoonful of medicine and put it in front of Shen Yu's mouth. As expected, the youth dodged. After several attempts, Shang Junlin had no choice but to shackle the youth with one hand. He took a mouthful of medicine and put the bowl to the side. His other hand slightly pried open the youth's tightly pursed lips and bent down. Just like that, he fed the youth the medicine for the entire night. Shang Junlin took the bowl of medicine and went out to change his clothes on the way. When Shen Yu woke up, the first thing he felt was bitterness. The bitterness in his mouth lingered and his body felt heavy. Waves of coldness rushed over him, as if he had returned to his previous life. The man sitting by the bed pulled him back to reality. Seeing Shang Junlin staring at his lips, Shen Yu licked his lips. Your Majesty, why are you looking at me like that? Did you do something bad behind my back? Chapter 52. Because of the medicine, Shen Yu's lips were rosy compared to his pale face. It was as if there was a touch of red on the white snow, making him look even more attractive. Shang Junlin still remembered the feeling. The bitterness of the medicine couldn't cover up the sweetness he felt. The tip of her dark red tongue stuck out from between her teeth and lips, sweeping across her rosy lips. Shang Junlin's eyes darkened. Shang Junlin put down the things in his hands and reached out to touch Shen Yu's forehead to check his temperature. It was not as cold as before. He gradually felt relieved. Imperial Physician Goose said that if Shen Yu woke up, there would be no major problems. Shen Yu was stunned by Shang Junlin's series of actions. Your Majesty, what happened? He's fine now. Your Majesty, do you still want to hide it from me? Shen Yu narrowed his eyes. The gray-clothed man obviously did something to induce his illness. Knowing that Shen Yu was not easy to fool, Shang Junlin helplessly told him what happened at Sangqi Mountain. I have already sent the hidden dragon guards and the imperial guards to arrest him. There will be results soon. Shen Yu lay down for a long time and felt very uncomfortable. Especially in his mouth, there was a bitter taste that could not be ignored. The taste was different from any medicine in his memory. He propped himself up and wanted to sit up. Shang Junlin saw this and helped him up. He stuffed a soft cushion behind his back. How do you feel now? I'm fine. It's just that my mouth is very bitter. Shen Yu frowned and complained. What medicine is used this time? It's so bitter. Shang Junlin got up and came back with a cup of water. Drink some. Shen Yu really wanted to suppress the bitter taste in his mouth. He held the cup and drank a big mouthful. It's sweet. Shen Yu pursed his lips and drank it in small sips. Shang Junlin saw his eyebrows relax and answered, it's a new prescription made by Imperial Physician Gu. In order to maximize the effect of the medicine, he didn't add any medicine that could reduce the bitterness. No wonder I can feel the bitterness lingering in my sleep. Shen Yu understood. Is this honey water? It tastes so sweet. Yes, Shang Junlin nodded. I was worried that you would feel bitter when you woke up, so I specially prepared it in advance. After drinking the cup of water, Shen Yu ordered Shang Junlin to bring him some candied fruits and ate them. After eating the candies, the bitterness in his mouth was finally suppressed. Shen Yu was also in the mood to delve into other issues, such as, Your Majesty, how did I drink such a bitter medicine? Shen Yu was well aware of his willfulness in certain aspects. It was fine when no one indulged him, but when someone indulged him, it was impossible for him to drink such a bitter medicine, especially when he was in a comatose state. In his previous life, he had fallen into a coma many times because of his illness. Every time, his subordinates and doctors were helpless. They could only wait until he woke up to take the medicine. The doctor who treated him had told him more than once that every time he fell into a coma, he was worried that he would never wake up. He told him to change his temperament and not be so resistant to taking medicine when he was in a coma. Obviously, taking medicine when he was awake was very satisfying. Shen Yu thought, I also don't want to take medicine when I'm awake. I can drink it every time without changing my expression because I have no other choice. When I'm in a coma, my body is controlled by instinct. It just reflects my instinct to not like bitter medicine. Shen Yu recalled the bitter taste in his mouth when he woke up. Compared to his previous life, the taste was even worse. It was definitely not something he could drink when he was in a coma. He became more curious. After asking, Shen Yu looked at Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin's expression did not change. If you are curious, I will feed you again later. Then you will know. Shen Yu thought for a while and put this question aside. He asked something more important. I remember that I fell ill after I met the man in gray. Was it because of him? Shang Junlin held Shen Yu's wrist and rubbed it. It's very likely, but we can't rule out other factors. It was because of this that Shang Junlin asked the hidden dragon guards and the imperial army to surround Sangqi Mountain. From the time they got off the carriage to the time they met the man in gray, anyone they met in between could be a problem. Your Majesty, I want to go out for a walk. Shin Yu was unable to sleep after lying down for an entire afternoon. Shang Junlin brought clothes and helped Shin Yu change. Shin Yu was already used to the emperor's habit of dressing him up. He stretched out his arms and let Shang Junlin help him put on his coat and cloak. Shin Yu's pale face was hidden behind the white fur collar. Shang Junlin tidied up his hair and held his belt as they walked out of the room. This time, Shin Yu almost used up half of his energy. Shin Yu could not exert any strength. He leaned on Shang Junlin's body and let the man carry him. Shang Junlin felt a weight on his body after taking 2 steps. He looked at the young man who was brazenly using his strength to walk and laughed. "Where do you want to go? I will carry you there." Shin Yu shook his head and decided to walk on his own. Shang Junlin was not angry when he was rejected. He supported most of Shin Yu's weight and took him for a walk in the courtyard. The sky was not completely dark yet. The sunset spread from the horizon and dyed half of the sky red. Shin Yu looked up and sighed. "It's so beautiful. It's a pity that it's sunset. You can't see it today, but you can see it tomorrow. It's not a pity." Shang Junlin broke Shin Yu's sadness. "Your Majesty is right." Shin Yu changed the topic. "Your Majesty just mentioned Imperial Physician Gu. How did Imperial Physician Gu happen to meet us?" Shang Junlin replied, "He took his younger brother to Tsangqi Mountain to pick herbs. After you fainted, he saw you in the crowd and came over." "Where is Imperial Physician Gu now?" "He is in the village." Shang Junlin seemed to know what Shin Yu was going to ask next, so he added, "His younger brother is also there." Shin Yu walked for a while and realized that this was the place he wanted to take Shang Junlin to. He was surprised. "Your Majesty, why are you here?" "The situation was urgent. Your maidservant said this place was closer, so we came over." Shang Junlin wanted to see the place where Shin Yu used to live. He thought that Shin Yu had always wanted to come here. If he missed this opportunity, he might be disappointed. Therefore, he agreed to Mu Shi's proposal. Before Shin Yu fell into a coma, he was worried that he would not be able to come to the village. He did not expect that when he woke up, he was already in the village. He was pleasantly surprised. Shin Yu woke up, but Shang Junlin was still worried. He asked eunuch Meng to invite Imperial Physician Gu. The main reason for bringing Imperial Physician Gu to the village was to make it easier to deal with Shin Yu's sudden situation. Imperial Physician Gu rushed over as soon as he heard the news. Gu Huai followed behind him with a medicine box. Shin Yu walked around and was a little tired. Shang Junlin helped him to sit down in the pavilion. This manor occupied a large area. Shin Yu looked around. He had not returned to this place for many years, and his memories faded away. His memory slowly recovered under the scenery that he could see. "Your Majesty, look over there." Shin Yu pointed to a big tree not far away. "When I was young, I had people build a small swing there. Then, one year, there was a rainstorm and the rope broke. I was sad for a long time." Shang Junlin looked in the direction Shin Yu pointed. It was a very big tree. It was so big that 3 people would not be able to encircle it. A thick branch stretched out horizontally. Traces of ropes could be vaguely seen on it. Shang Junlin could almost imagine a little dumpling sitting under a tree and swinging on a swing. Sunlight shone through the gaps between the leaves, and mottled light and shadow fell on the little dumpling's body. The breeze blew through his hair, and the little dumpling grew up bit by bit, turning into a young man. His silhouette turned from blurry to clear, and gradually became Shin Yu's current appearance. "Your Majesty, Imperial Physician Gu is here." After getting permission, Imperial Physician Gu first checked Shin Yu's pulse. Putting down his hand, Imperial Physician Gu breathed a sigh of relief. "Guijun is fine now. Next, he just needs to recuperate." Shang Junlin also breathed a sigh of relief. Feeling the strength of the hand holding his wrist lessen, Shen Yu smiled at Shang Junlin to comfort him. It's okay. Your Majesty, don't worry. In his previous life, he lived for more than 10 years with such a weak body. There was no reason for him to have an accident so early in this life. After comforting Shang Junlin, Shen Yu looked at the boy standing behind Imperial Physician Gu. Looking into the boy's eyes, Shen Yu was stunned. Although the boy's eyes were still a little immature, it was not difficult to see his master's fierceness. No matter how well he pretended, he could not change his bloodthirsty nature. Is this Imperial Physician Gu's younger brother? Shen Yu put away his complicated thoughts and pretended to be curious. Yes. His name is Gu Huai. Imperial Physician Gu pulled the boy. This is the Shen Guijun I mentioned to you before. That is His Majesty. It was the first time Gu Huai officially met the two of them. Whether it was the Emperor or Guijun, they were very different from what he had imagined. Gu Huai hid the distracting thoughts in his eyes and respectfully bowed to the two of them. Shen Yu calmly looked at the boy for a while and asked, "The Huai in your memory?" "It's the Huai in Tangerine grows in Huainan," Gu Huai explained. Shen Yu nodded. Gu Huai. So his name is Gu Huai. Shen Yu thought of the person in his previous life and couldn't help but sigh. In front of the people he cared about, the crazy wolf would also show a docile side. He wondered what kind of path Imperial Physician Gu would take in the future if nothing happened to him in this life. What are you thinking about? Why are you so lost in thought? Shen Yu sat on the bed in a daze and was poked in the face. Shen Yu rubbed his face and said, "I'm just thinking that Imperial Physician Gu and Gu Huai don't look alike. Are they biological brothers?" Guijun has been thinking about this since last night. Shang Junlin lowered his eyes and sat on the bed. Guijun seems to be paying special attention to a certain person. Why is that? Isn't His Majesty curious? Shen Yu acted as if he didn't feel Shang Junlin's dissatisfaction. That Gu Huai is not as simple as he looks. I know. He was also involved in the matter of Fei Meng. The hidden dragon guards found out that he was also looking for the mastermind, so they didn't pay much attention to him. Shang Junlin touched Shen Yu's body temperature. Shang Junlin's hand was very warm. Shen Yu subconsciously rubbed against his palm. Why is he also concerned about Fei Meng? Shen Yu thought about it. In his previous life, he met Gu Huai a few years later. At that time, it had been some time since the Fei Meng incident. Shen Yu wasn't sure if he was involved in the Fei Meng case before he met Gu Huai. If he was, what was his role in it? If Guijun wants to know, you can ask him to come and ask him. After knowing that Gu Huai had nothing to do with the mastermind, Shang Junlin didn't pay much attention to him. There were very few people in this world that he cared about. Now, Shen Yu was one of them. In other words, from the beginning to the end, there was only one Shen Yu. I think it's better not to. It's not good to scare him. If he really cares about the existence of Fei Meng, like His Majesty said, he will take the initiative to look for him. Knock knock. Someone knocked on the door. Come in. Mu Shi came in with the medicine. Before she even got close, Shen Yu could already smell the bitter smell that made people uncomfortable. He couldn't figure out how he drank this medicine when he was unconscious. Shang Junlin took the medicine. Mu Shi tactfully retreated. Shen Yu grabbed the quilt and asked softly, "Your Majesty, I'm already awake. I don't need to drink this medicine, right? Guijun is already so old. Why are you still afraid of drinking medicine?" Shang Junlin walked to the bedside and sat down. The medicine he drank before was modified by Imperial Physician Gu, so it wasn't that bitter. This medicine was different. Shin Yu felt uncomfortable just by smelling it. In his previous life, he didn't feel much after drinking so much medicine. This time, with Shang Junlin around, Shin Yu didn't want to drink the bitter medicine. Shang Junlin supported Shin Yu's shoulder with one hand to prevent him from shrinking back. His other hand held the medicine firmly and coaxed in a low voice, "Be good. Shin will feed you." "How do you feed me?" Shin Yu was vigilant. Shang Junlin took a mouthful of the medicine and leaned over. He showed Shin Yu how he fed him the medicine last time. Chapter 53. Shin Yu felt something warm on his lips, and then the bitter medicine was poured into his mouth. Oh! Shin Yu resisted and pushed the man who was half on top of him. Unfortunately, all his resistance was in vain. The tip of the man's tongue pried open his teeth. The purpose of the man was to feed him the medicine, so he didn't go too deep. Shin Yu's hand that was pressing on the man's clothes unconsciously tightened. The medicine that he didn't have time to swallow slid down the corner of his mouth and wet the collar of his neck. Shin Yu couldn't refuse. On one side was the man's strong tongue, and on the other side was the medicine that was constantly being poured into his mouth. He could only comply with the man's wishes and swallow the medicine bit by bit. After swallowing the medicine in his mouth, Shin Yu felt that his lower teeth were gently scraped. He looked up and saw the man get up as if nothing had happened and was about to continue feeding him. Shin Yu didn't care about anything else. He grabbed the bowl of medicine and drank it without hesitation. He finally figured out how Shang Junlin fed him the medicine when he was unconscious. However, Shin Yu felt that it was better not to know. Seeing that Shin Yu obediently drank the medicine, Shang Junlin's eyes flashed with a trace of regret. He brought over the candied fruits that he had prepared earlier. Shin Yu ate some and finally felt that the bitterness in his mouth wasn't as bitter as before. "Your Majesty, don't you want to eat some?" Without waiting for Shang Junlin to answer, Shin Yu picked up a candied fruit and fed it to the man's mouth. "Anyway, you suffered because of me. Your Majesty, you should taste the sweetness that I fed you." Shang Junlin lowered his eyes and ate the candied fruit in Shin Yu's hand. "Is it sweet?" Shin Yu tilted his head and looked at Shang Junlin's face. "Yes." The candied fruit was sweet, but the candied fruit that Shin Yu fed him was even sweeter. After drinking the medicine, Shin Yu's clothes were a little dirty. He didn't want to lie on the bed anymore, so he ordered Shang Junlin, "Your Majesty, my clothes are dirty. Quickly bring me a clean one." As he wished, Shang Junlin found him a set of clean clothes. Shin Yu stained his inner clothes. Before he changed his clothes, he glanced at Shang Junlin and said, "Shouldn't Your Majesty look away from indecent things?" She motioned for him to leave quickly. Shang Junlin remained unmoved. "Which part of your body have I not seen?" Shin Yu looked at him without saying anything. Finally, Shang Junlin was defeated. "I will turn around and not look, okay?" After that, Shang Junlin turned around. Shin Yu saw that he really had no intention of leaving, so she quickly changed her clothes and put on her outer robe. "Okay." Shang Junlin turned around and walked over to help Shin Yu tidy up his messy outer shirt. Breakfast had already been prepared. Knowing that the two masters had already woken up, Eunuch Meng ordered the servants to serve the food one by one. Shin Yu sat opposite Shang Junlin and pointed at a few dishes that he had never seen before. "Are these the new dishes developed by the plantation? This is a medicinal cuisine specially prepared for you." Shin Yu had eaten medicinal cuisine before, and without exception, there would be a faint medicinal smell. However, the dishes in front of him, even though he was so close, he couldn't smell a trace of medicinal smell. Shin Yu picked up a piece with her chopsticks and put it into her mouth. The meat was fresh and tender, and the taste was indeed different from what Shin Yu usually ate. However, it didn't taste like the medicinal cuisine that he had imagined. I know that you don't like the smell of medicinal herbs, so these medicinal cuisines have been used to suppress the smell of medicinal herbs. Shang Junlin seemed to have sensed Shen Yu's doubts and explained. Did you find the gray-clothed man? After eating, Shen Yu thought of the strange gray-clothed man. He was very sure that he didn't know that person. Why would that person find him? What made him even more puzzled was, how could his illness be induced just by passing by? Shen Yu's illness had been there since he was a child. All the doctors who had treated him said that his illness came from his mother's womb. Shen Yu had never doubted this point. Now, it seemed that there was a hidden story behind this matter. As they were talking, the leader of the Imperial Guards asked to see Shen Yu outside. Shang Junlin didn't hide it from him and let him in to report. The leader of the Imperial Guards first greeted Shen Yu and Shang Junlin before he started to talk about business. I sent people to search the mountain for a night and successfully caught a few people with evil intentions. They were sent to the prison for interrogation. The person that your majesty mentioned was also caught, but it wasn't my people who caught him. Who was it? I brought them along with me. The people who came were wearing black uniforms. According to the leader of the Imperial Guards, these people were also active in the vicinity of Tsangqi Mountain and happened to catch the gray-clothed man who wanted to escape. If it wasn't for them, the gray-clothed man might have really escaped. The gray-clothed man was very familiar with the Imperial Guard style. He avoided all of their detection routes and also had a way to deal with the hidden dragon guards. After a few rounds of camouflage to avoid detection, he disappeared from Tsangqi Mountain without a trace. Thank you very much. If you need anything, you can ask directly. Shen Yu said. We are just following our master's orders. There's no need for you to say anything. Thank you. One of the black-clothed men replied. Shen Yu wasn't surprised by this reply. These two men looked like well-trained secret guards. He just didn't know which family in the capital had the ability to train such a team. After the Imperial Guards left, Shen Yu told Shang Junlin about his doubts. Shang Junlin pondered for a moment. As far as I know, the existing aristocratic families in the capital are not enough to train such a group of people. Shen Yu, no matter who they are, they have helped us. We should thank them properly. Shang Junlin, you are right. Shen Yu, your majesty, do you think that these people are the same group of people who are investigating the Fei Meng incident? Shang Junlin, do you mean that these people are Gu Huai's people? Shen Yu nodded, but we can't be completely sure. Shen Yu suddenly remembered that in his previous life, Gu Huai always had a group of people who were loyal to him. He had seen the strength of those people. If he had to say, they could be compared to the black-clothed men this time. The gray-clothed man was locked up in the dark prison and there would be special people to interrogate him. Shang Junlin and Shen Yu only needed to wait for the results. Shen Yu found that Shang Junlin liked to stick to him even more. Except for the time when he had to review memorials every day, he liked to spend the rest of his time with him. If Shen Yu didn't find it boring to review memorials next to him, Shang Junlin wouldn't even let him leave during that time. Your Majesty, you can't do this. Shen Yu helplessly looked at Shang Junlin who was holding onto his clothes. I just want to go out for a walk. You can wait for me to finish my official business first. Shang Junlin didn't let go. Shen Yu argued, Your Majesty, we need to be independent of each other. Even if we are an ordinary husband and wife, we can't always stick together. After much persuasion, Shen Yu finally won some private time for himself. You. Shen Yu turned around and saw a young man in a navy blue short-sleeved shirt walking towards him. Young Master Gu. Can I have a private talk with you? Gu Huai glanced at Mu Shi who was beside Shen Yu and added, It's about Fei Meng. Of course, Shen Yu turned to Mu Shi and said, You can leave first. The fish had taken the bait. Originally, after confirming that his body was fine, Imperial physician Gu could leave. Shen Yu wanted to confirm some things, so he asked Shang Junlin to keep Imperial Physician Gu. Imperial Physician Gu's younger brother, Gu Huai, was also asked to stay. The next step was to create an opportunity for Gu Huai to meet him alone. Shen Yu wasn't worried that Gu Huai would harm him. His people were all in the manor, and there were also the hidden dragon guards in the dark. As long as Gu Huai was smart, he wouldn't choose to do anything to him under such circumstances. If he really did do anything to him, he could just get rid of him directly. There was no need to say anything else. "You've been waiting for me." Without any outsiders, Gu Huai didn't hide himself anymore. The young man's facial features were still young, but his aura gradually overlapped with that of the person Shen Yu knew in his previous life. Especially his eyes, which were like a bottomless abyss, overflowing with hostility. "I just guessed that you would come to find me." Shen Yu leisurely poured himself a cup of tea. "Do you want it?" "It's the best rain mist silver needle." In his previous life, that person told him before he took action that if there was a chance, he would invite him to drink the rain mist silver needle. Unfortunately, he only received the tragic news of that person dying together with the enemy. This time, he came back with his memories, so he treated it as the last appointment in his previous life. Without waiting for Gu Huai to answer, Shen Yu poured a cup for him. "Do you like to make your own decisions when you're with Her Majesty?" Gu Huai took a sip. "Children shouldn't meddle in the affairs of adults." Shen Yu slowly took a sip of tea. "You should cherish this opportunity. Next time, if you want to drink it, you can only make it for yourself." Gu Huai was speechless. After a long while, he said, "You're not much older than me." "Yes," Shen Yu directly admitted. "But I'm married. Haven't you heard? After marriage, I'm an adult." Gu Huai took a deep breath and decided to get down to business. "I want to know if the Imperial Palace is involved in the matter of Fei Meng." From the clues he found, the Imperial Palace and Fei Meng were inextricably linked. "I can't guarantee others, but I can be sure that Her Majesty is absolutely not involved in the matter of Fei Meng. I was the one who suggested to investigate Fei Meng." Shen Yu's expression became serious. "I believe you." Gu Huai took a deep look at Shen Yu, took out a secret letter from his chest, and pushed it in front of Shen Yu. "This is the clue my people found. You may have found some of it as well. The people who caught the gray-robed man were your people, right?" Shen Yu didn't take the secret letter, but asked about another matter. Gu Huai, "Yes, before the cooperation, I should have shown you some sincerity. Besides this time, the people who shouted out the identity of the King of Yu in public were also arranged by me." "Shen Yu, what is your purpose?" "I want to find the initiator of Fei Meng and avenge my family." Gu Huai didn't beat around the bush. When he said these words, his tone was cold. "Before the matter of Fei Meng is completely resolved, I can only say this much." Gu Huai loosened his clenched fist. "If something happens, I hope Her Majesty can protect my brother. When the time comes, don't worry about me." Imperial Physician Gu definitely doesn't think so. Shen Yu shook his head. If not, how could Gu Huai survive after being implicated in such a big case in his previous life? It was impossible to investigate the truth of his previous life. Fortunately, he had changed Imperial Physician Gu's ending. When Shang Junlin finished his work and came looking for him, Gu Huai had already left. Shen Yu was staring at the empty cup in a daze. "What did Gu Huai say to you?" Shen Yu wasn't surprised that Shang Junlin knew about his private meeting with Gu Huai. He had already talked to Shang Junlin about it. He handed the unopened secret letter to the man. "It's about Fei Meng." Shang Junlin put the secret letter aside and said thoughtfully, "Why didn't Gu Huai come directly to us? Maybe he has a knot in his heart. If he is really a child of that family who survived." Thinking about it, Shin Yu felt that if his family died because of the imperial family's muddle-headedness, he wouldn't be nice to the imperial family either. Of course, this was on the premise that his family wasn't like Jinbei Ho. It was better not to have them. Your Majesty, don't you want to see what's inside? After returning to the room, Shin Yu saw that the man had no intention of opening the secret letter and asked, Guijun, come and look with us. Shin Yu walked over and was pulled onto the man's lap. His waist was tightly hugged. Shin Yu struggled, but the man didn't move. This position was too dangerous. Shin Yu didn't dare to move too much. He could only accept his fate and nestled in the man's arms. Shang Junlin opened the secret letter and Shin Yu looked at it. Indeed, as Gu Huai said, they had already found some things inside, but there were also many things they hadn't found out yet. For example, Fei Meng didn't originate from De Huan, but was brought by a woman from a foreign vassal. Why didn't the palace record such important information? Shin Yu asked. Shin Yu was puzzled. Someone must have deliberately erased it. After reading the secret letter, Shin Yu was about to get up. After reading it, Your Majesty should let me go. Shin Yu suddenly shut his mouth and turned to look at Shang Junlin. Guijun neglected us today because of someone else. Shouldn't you compensate us? The man murmured discontentedly. Guijun even poured tea for him. Chapter 54. Shang Junlin felt the side of his neck being bitten. With the previous experience, he didn't dare to use too much force this time. He only used the tip of his teeth to bite a small piece of skin and gently rubbed it. This was undoubtedly more unbearable than direct pain. Shin Yu was tightly held in the man's arms. He couldn't move and could only let Shang Junlin do whatever he wanted. Didn't His Majesty acquiesce? Shin Yu asked while breathing unsteadily. Shin Yu had hinted to Shang Junlin from the beginning that he wanted to meet Gu Huai alone. He originally thought that Gu Huai would meet Shang Junlin face to face. After all, in his memory, Gu Huai had always been a decisive and ruthless person. In order to achieve his goal, he would put everything aside. Maybe it was because Imperial Physician Gu was still alive in this life, so Mad Wolf was willing to put shackles on himself. What are you thinking about? Noticing that Shin Yu was absent-minded, Shang Junlin increased his strength as if he was punishing him. Shin Yu didn't have time to think about anything else. I think His Majesty just found a random reason to bite me. Shin Yu muttered discontentedly. How can His Majesty think so? If His Majesty didn't refuse to take the initiative, I wouldn't have to take it personally. The wet feeling turned to the side of his face and spread all the way up to his delicate jawline, small chin, and finally fell to the corner of his lips. Shang Junlin stared at the soft lips in front of him. His eyes were as dark as the abyss. He once kissed the lips of the young man when he was unconscious. Even though there was a bitter medicine between them, he couldn't ignore the touch at that moment. It was so soft. With the body temperature of the young man, just a touch could bring an indescribable shiver. At that time, he was in a hurry to feed the young man the medicine and ignored all other feelings. Only when he thought about it later, the feeling of being ignored emerged from the depths of his memory. It was deeply rooted in his mind. Feeling the man's breath getting closer and closer to his lips, Shin Yu tilted his head. The man's kiss that should have fallen on his lips fell to the corner of his lips. Shin Yu stubbornly tilted his head and refused to let Shang Junlin's lips touch his. Why is you unwilling? Shang Junlin did not force her. He continued to peck and nibble on Shin Yu's face, leaving waves of numbness. Shin Yu himself couldn't tell the reason. At the same time, he couldn't help but feel wronged. Let go of me. Shang Junlin compromised. He kissed Shin Yu's forehead to comfort her and let her go. Shin Yu slid down from Shang Junlin's body and sat aside. She looked a little dazed. Why do you feel wronged? Shang Junlin got up and squatted in front of Xinyu. You and I are husband and wife. It's normal for us to do these intimate things. I know you might not be used to it for the time being. I'll wait for you to get used to it. He had given them enough leeway, but he was also strong enough that they could not refuse. Xinyu touched his face blankly. Am I so obvious? You is about to slap your unwillingness on my face. Shang Junlin held Xinyu's hand and squeezed it gently. You and I are husband and wife. We can do any intimate things. Xinyu didn't know what he was thinking. He didn't resist Shang Junlin's intimacy. He even liked it a little. However, he didn't want to break through the last line. It was as if something was warning him that once he broke through, something he didn't want to see would happen. I know. After a moment of silence, Xinyu whispered, I will. Shang Junlin covered his lips with his palm and interrupted his unfinished words. It's my fault for making you feel uneasy. You doesn't have to force yourself to cater to me. What Shang Junlin wanted was a willing Xinyu. He could feel that Xinyu had a knot in his heart. Although he didn't know where this knot came from, he would find a way to untie it. Your Majesty, hug me. Xinyu was never sad. Putting away those messy thoughts, Xinyu thought to himself, let nature take its course. If something really happened, he believed that he had the ability to solve it. Shang Junlin stood up, leaned over, and held Xinyu tightly in his arms. The man's biting cold breath gradually filled the empty space. Xinyu was surrounded by the familiar breath and his heart gradually calmed down. After returning to the palace, I'll make tea for your Majesty. What would your Majesty like to drink? Xinyu put his hands around the man's waist and buried his face in the man's arms. As long as it's made by you, I'll like it. The commotion caused by Tsangqi Mountain was too big. Although the news was blocked, some ministers still received the news that His Majesty and the Emperor had been assassinated. It was also at this time that they found out that Shang Junlin had taken Xinyu out of the palace. Admonishing memorials poured in like dancing snowflakes. They all urged Shang Junlin to stay in the palace and not make trouble. Nothing happened this time. It could be said that he was lucky. Who could guarantee that there wouldn't be any problems next time? What if there was? Xinyu casually flipped through a few memorials piled up on the short table. They were all urging Shang Junlin to return to the palace. Their memorials all talk about these things. Xinyu was slightly speechless. There are also some that talk about serious matters. Shang Junlin pointed to a small pile of memorials in front of him. Xinyu put back the memorials in his hand, walked to Shang Junlin and sat down. Your Majesty can leave those unimportant ones to your ministers. It's too much of a waste of time for your Majesty to look through them personally. The Emperor's words are reasonable. Why don't the Emperor help me? While you're at it, leave those unimportant ones for your Majesty to deal with. Xinyu bumped Shang Junlin. The Emperor and I are indeed of the same mind. After speaking, Shang Junlin pushed part of the memorials in front of Xinyu. Xinyu saw Fong Daren's name in the memorials. He took out the memorials and pushed them in front of Shang Junlin. Is there any result on Prince Yu's matter? Shang Junlin opened the memorials. The contents of the memorials were some of the information that Fong Daren had found. The details would be presented in the form of files after being sorted out. We have to wait for a while. Shang Junlin wanted to take this opportunity to find out what the previous emperor had left for Prince Yu. In the secret prison. Prince Yu thought that he would be able to get out soon. A few days later, he couldn't help but start to panic. No one interrogated him. Except for 2 meals a day, when the jailer came to deliver food, he almost never saw him. Shang Junlin seemed to have forgotten about him. The process of waiting was always torturous, especially when there was no one to talk to. Prince Yu became more and more impatient. He couldn't help but think, why didn't Shang Junlin interrogate him? Where were his people? Why was there no movement at all? What was happening outside? Shang Junlin dared to attack him. Did he really not care about the previous emperor? Prince Yu's biggest reliance was the things that the previous emperor had left for him. It was also because of these things that he could have such thoughts. It was obvious that the previous emperor favored him the most. Otherwise, why would the previous emperor give those things to him? It was easy to feed a person's ambition, let alone a prince who had been indoctrinated with the idea of fighting for power and profit since childhood. With each passing day, Prince Yu became more and more anxious. Finally, when the jailer came to deliver food, he couldn't help but stop him. I want to see His Majesty. The jailer knew this person's identity. He also knew that the higher-ups had ordered him to only lock him up and not do anything. He didn't know what the higher-ups were thinking. The jailer didn't dare to hide the news and reported it to the higher-ups. In the blink of an eye, Shang Junlin received the news from the secret prison. Is His Majesty going to see him? Shen Yu sat by the window. He held his sleeves with one hand and held the teapot with the other. He slowly poured out the steaming hot tea. The beauty sat by the window and boiled the tea smoothly. No matter how one looked at it, it was a kind of visual enjoyment. They had already returned to the palace. Seeing that the ministers were about to give up if His Majesty didn't return to the palace, and Shen Yu's health was getting better, it was more convenient to stay outside the palace. After discussing, they decided to return to the palace in advance. After returning to the palace, the ministers really stopped. Finally, they didn't have to find a pile of memorials to persuade the emperor to return to the palace. Shen Yu was greatly relieved. There's no need to see him. Shang Junlin walked to the opposite side of Shen Yu and sat down, admiring the young man's movements. Compared to seeing Prince Yu, he preferred to stay with Shen Yu in Yuzhang Palace. Even if he didn't do anything, he would still be in a good mood. Shen Yu deftly put the brewed tea in front of Shang Junlin. Would Your Majesty like to try it? Shang Junlin picked up the cup and took a sip. The fragrance lingered in his mouth for a long time. He praised, "You has good skills. I learned it in my free time. It's good that Your Majesty likes it." Shen Yu also poured a cup for himself. He learned how to brew tea when he went to Prince Yu's fief in his previous life. He learned it in order to help Prince Yu win over a reclusive great scholar. Later, it gradually became a pure hobby. Shen Yu was affected by his health. There were many things that he couldn't do. When he brewed tea, he could calm down and not think about those scheming things. Over time, this habit was retained. I don't know if young Master Jiang and young Master He have guessed our identities. Shen Yu held the teacup. I hope both of you can be successful. He Qingyu and Shen Yu didn't know. He didn't have any interaction with this person in his previous life. However, he knew about Jiang Huiqing. If he wasn't implicated, he would definitely be able to rise to the top. Yu thinks highly of these two people? Shang Junlin rubbed the cup in his hand. Yu has good taste. He Qingyu is the most outstanding person among the younger generation of the He family in Jiangnan. The He family in Jiangnan hasn't been an official since the reign of the previous emperor. I don't know why they are willing to let their most outstanding younger generation participate in this competition. They probably feel that Your Majesty is someone they can pledge their loyalty to. Why should Your Majesty care? What are they thinking? If He Qingyu is really as outstanding as the rumors say, wouldn't he be able to display his strength better by serving the country? Otherwise, why would there be a saying of learn both civil and martial arts and serve the emperor's family? Yu is really. Shang Junlin shook his head. Yu has been paying attention to Jiang Huiqing. Is he really that outstanding? How should I put it? How about I make a bet with your majesty? If the winner this time is Jiang Huiqing, your majesty will agree to one of my requests. How about it? If you loses, can you take the initiative to kiss me? Shang Junlin pointed at his lips, kiss here. Shen Yu thought about it and agreed. Your majesty's orders have been completed. Eunuch Meng walked in with his head lowered. Shang Junlin put down his teacup and stood up, you, come with me. I want to show you something. What do you want to see? Shang Junlin walked in front of Shen Yu and held his hand. The two of them walked out side by side. Eunuch Meng followed behind the two of them. He looked down and thought to himself, Your Majesty is really paying more and more attention to Guijun. Now that he's interacting with Guijun, he doesn't even have much of an emperor's etiquette left. Passing through the corridor, what came into view was a century-old tree with thick branches. Under the tree, there was a swing quietly hanging from it. I couldn't restore your original swing, so I had them make a new one according to your preferences. Do you like it? Shang Junlin looked at the side of the young man's face. His eyes were filled with tenderness. Chapter 55. Shen Yu couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. He had only mentioned the swing to Shang Junlin once. He didn't expect that Shang Junhua would build a swing for him in Yuzhang Palace in the blink of an eye. A swing wasn't a big deal. What was rare was that as the emperor, Shang Junlin actually kept his matter in mind. I like it very much. Shen Yu turned around and met the man's tender eyes. He repeated, I really like it, Your Majesty. Let's go and take a look. Shang Junlin held Shen Yu's hand and walked towards the swing. The man's hand was warm and strong. Shen Yu's hand was curled up in the man's palm, like a tired bird that had found a shelter from the wind and rain. Shen Yu looked at the swing that had suddenly appeared and gave him a great surprise. The rope hanging on the swing was 2 fingers thick. There were green vines with white flowers wrapped around it. The seat below was very big, big enough for him and Shang Junlin to sit down together. Shen Yu walked around the swing and felt a little itchy. Your Majesty, I'll sit on it. Please push me. Shen Yu finished speaking and sat on the swing. For comfort, the wooden chair was covered with a thick velvet blanket to isolate the coolness of the wooden chair and reduce the hardness of the wooden chair. Shang Junlin walked behind Shen Yu and slowly pushed the swing. Shen Yu sat on the swing. As the swing rose and fell, the breeze brushed past his cheeks and raised his hair behind him. Every time the swing fell, Shen Yu's hair would be blown to Shang Junlin's body and hands. Shen Yu narrowed his eyes. After swinging for a while, he suddenly realized that it wasn't good to let Shang Junlin push him. The next time the swing fell, he pulled Shang Junlin's sleeve. What's wrong? Shang Junlin firmly grabbed the rope of the swing and stopped it. Shen Yu leaned sideways and looked up at him. I want Your Majesty to accompany me. Shang Junlin paused for a while. In the end, he couldn't resist the idea of playing on the swing with Shen Yu. He walked to Shen Yu's side and sat down. They didn't let the palace servants push the swing. Instead, they let the swing swing slowly. Shen Yu leaned on Shang Junlin's shoulder and talked about his childhood. At that time, Shen Qingran liked to show off to me. Count Zhenbei made a swing for him in the courtyard. He liked it very much and dragged me to see his swing. Shen Yu's gaze slowly drifted away. The kind that I watched him play. It's been a long time. Shen Yu didn't really remember these things during the new year. Today, sitting on the swing, the long-lost memories were dug out. He laughed very happily. At that time, I was standing not far away and wanted to try it. I wanted to try the feeling of flying. But I knew that Shen Qingran wouldn't let me sit on it. He was always like this. Whenever he got something good, he had to show it off in front of me. Speaking of this, Shin Yu chuckled. At that time, I still had fantasies about Count Jinbei. I even naively went to Count Jinbei to ask for the same thing. The result was as you can imagine. It's Count Jinbei's fault. Shang Junlin stroked Shin Yu's hair. Later, I slowly understood that Count Jinbei was unreliable. No matter how much I wanted something, I wouldn't go to him. In fact, what kind of precious things could a child want? It was nothing more than the warmth behind those things. Unfortunately, Count Jinbei wasn't willing to give him even a little warmth. Let's not talk about Count Jinbei. Back to the swing. Later, when I slowly grew up, someone came to me with the title deed and said that there were some things left by my mother for me. That village was one of them. When I went to the village, I asked someone to make a swing. I tried it and found that the feeling was completely different from what I imagined. It won't happen again in the future. Shang Junlin held Shin Yu's arm tightly. Huh? Shin Yu was surprised. You won't have anything that he wants but can't get in the future. Shang Junlin couldn't change Shin Yu's past that he couldn't participate in. He could only make up for the regrets of the past bit by bit. But he could guarantee that with his participation in the future, Shin Yu wouldn't have the same regrets. I'm not a child anymore. If I really want something, I'll get it myself. Shin Yu looked up at the sky. It's good now. I have your majesty. I'm already very satisfied. In this life, he was picked up for free. His destiny was in his own hands, and he could live it however he wanted. After returning to the palace, his life gradually got on the right track. Except for the bitter taste of the new prescription, Shin Yu didn't have any dissatisfaction. Can't we ask Imperial Physician Gu to change the prescription? Shin Yu drank the medicine in the bowl in one gulp. After drinking it, he immediately grabbed a handful of candied fruit and put it into his mouth. Endure for a few more days. After this treatment, you can change the previous prescription. Shin Yu faintly looked at the man who was standing and talking without thinking. Your Majesty said the same thing yesterday. Imperial Physician Gu said that it's too bitter to suppress. The flavored medicine will dilute the effect of the medicine. Bear with it for the sake of your health. Shang Junlin didn't want to see Shin Yu suffer. He had asked Imperial Physician Gu before. Compared to the discomfort of drinking medicine for a short period of time, he hoped that Shin Yu's body could recover as soon as possible. It had only been a few days, and the little bit of meat he had painstakingly gained was gone. His face was also smaller than before he got sick. Shin Yu knew that drinking medicine was for his own health. He just couldn't help but want to complain to Shang Junlin. Thinking of the reason for his illness, he asked, "What about the man in gray? Who did this to me?" We couldn't find out who the mastermind was. No matter how we tortured him, he refused to talk. If we didn't find out in time, he would have taken his own life. Shang Junlin wanted to know who the mastermind was more than Shin Yu. However, they had too few clues and couldn't find out anything. Last time, when Yuzhang Palace was in trouble, he changed most of the people in Yuzhang Palace. However, he still couldn't find out who the mastermind was. It would be difficult this time too. The man in gray should be a man of sacrifice. He knows our movements very well. He also knows the style of the Hidden Dragon Guards and the Imperial Guards. Shin Yu thought, let's not talk about the other two first. There shouldn't be many people in Dahuan who are familiar with the style of the Hidden Dragon Guards. The Hidden Dragon Guards were similar to men of sacrifice. They usually only acted in the dark. Many ministers only knew that Shang Junlin had such a force. As for how the Hidden Dragon Guards looked like and how they did things, they didn't know at all. Shin Yu said, we probably can't find out anything from the man in gray. Since the mastermind took action, he must have thought of a way out. Shang Junlin said, I know. The man in gray really gave the interrogators a headache. It was almost a consensus that they couldn't get anything out of the men of sacrifice. However, the emperor didn't want to talk about the person who hurt the emperor. They could only keep interrogating him. When the man was on his last breath, the emperor finally sent an order: don't get anything out of him. Continue interrogating him. What does the emperor mean? The people who received the order looked at each other. The emperor is avenging the emperor. Don't let him have an easy time. Someone reacted. The emperor really thinks highly of the emperor. Another person sighed. Don't talk about it anymore. Let's get to work. We also need to vent our anger for the past 2 days. On the other side of the dark prison, the king of you heard the low and hoarse screams from not far away. He shrank back at the corner. He didn't know if those people did it on purpose. They always interrogated the prisoners not far away from him. It was fine if it happened once or twice. However, if it happened too many times, even the gods couldn't stand the screams that always lingered in his ears. In addition to the screams, there were also all kinds of hair-raising sounds of punishment: the sizzling sound of hot soldering iron coming into contact with skin, the teeth-numbing creaking sound, the sound of whips falling in the wind, and the sound of people being hit. After a few days, the king of you was mentally and physically exhausted. His dreams were filled with similar sounds. He couldn't stay here any longer. He had to get out. The king of you didn't care about the previous emperor's instructions. He didn't want to use those forces unless it was absolutely necessary. He only wanted to get out of this dark place and get away from those torturous sounds. Your Majesty, there is movement. The leader of the hidden dragon guards knelt on the ground respectfully and said, "Don't alert the enemy first. I want to catch the big fish behind the king of you in one go." Shang Junlin supported his head with one hand and sat on the throne. His tone was calm. Yes. The king of you used a special method to contact someone. He was finally relieved. When he heard the screams next door, it wasn't as unbearable as before. The screams next door continued. Occasionally, he could hear some whispers. They were all talking about how the emperor doted on Shangui Jun. The king of you sat by the wall and subconsciously thought of the elegant young man in blue. Shinyu. What exactly went wrong that caused Shinyu's attitude to change so drastically overnight? The king of you still couldn't figure it out. Shinyu heard the king of you's movements from Shang Junlin. He was puzzled. Why did he suddenly lose his mind? With the king of you's cautiousness, it didn't make sense that he couldn't endure being imprisoned for a few days. I asked them to put the interrogation location near the king of you. Shang Junlin said calmly. Pfft, Shinyu couldn't help but laugh. How did your Majesty think of this method? Shinyu could already imagine how torturous the king of you was during this period of time. The king of you was someone who couldn't tolerate noise. With that kind of noise lingering in his ears every day, it was already his limit for him to only take action now. It's because you taught me well. Shinyu. What did I teach your Majesty? Shang Junlin reminded him. Last time, you asked me to send a letter to the king of you's lovers. Shinyu choked. Thinking of the king of you's bad luck during this period of time, he decided not to argue with Shang Junlin. Speaking of the secret prison, Shinyu thought of another person who was imprisoned in the secret prison. Your Majesty, is there any news about the He family? Yes. Shang Junlin frowned slightly. They secretly arrived in the capital. In the capital, they didn't do anything. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, Shang Junlin only asked people to pay attention to their every move. For the time being, he didn't do anything else. The He family, the mysterious force behind the He family, and the king of you. Shinyu connected the three together and couldn't help but have a new idea. Maybe the young master he was just a cover. If the king of you didn't get the help of the mysterious force because he saved the young master if that was the case, the king of you didn't need to spend so much effort to get the young master out of the secret prison. The king of you was a person who wouldn't do anything without benefits. If there weren't enough benefits, he wouldn't take such a big risk to save a person who was deeply imprisoned. Your Majesty, you should also pay attention to the young master He's movements during this period of time. Shin Yu reminded him. I'll pay attention. Shang Junlin finished speaking, put down the memorial in his hand and approached Shin Yu who was standing on the other side. Does your highness still remember our bet? The imperial examination in spring is about to begin. Shang Junlin carried Shin Yu to the soft couch and gently put him down. Then, he leaned over. Shin Yu turned around and escaped from Shang Junlin's shackles. The outcome hasn't been decided yet. Your Majesty, why are you so anxious? Chapter 56. Shang Junlin supported himself with one hand on the soft couch and looked sideways at Shin Yu. I can wait, but don't find an excuse to not fulfill your promise. Shin Yu got up and sat to the side. Why is your Majesty so sure that I will lose? What if your Majesty loses? Of course, I will fulfill my promise. Shang Junlin slowly got up and sat down. The soft couch was still the same as before. Shang Junlin looked at the distance between him and Shin Yu and said, let's change to another soft couch. Why do you suddenly want to change it? This one is quite comfortable. Shin Yu weighed himself. It was very soft and big. Sometimes, he could even lie on Shang Junlin's lap. Shang Junlin pursed his lips and didn't say anything. There was no problem with the comfort of the soft couch. He just wanted to change it to a smaller one. It was just right for the two of them to sit inside, and he wouldn't be unable to reach Shin Yu on the other side. Your Majesty, Shin Yu moved closer to Shang Junlin and asked, why do you want to change it? Just now, your Majesty was too far away from me. Shang Junlin didn't answer the question. Mr. Shin Yu was puzzled about the relationship between the two. After turning a corner, he suddenly realized something. He poked Shang Junlin's arm and said jokingly, does your Majesty think that the soft couch is too big? What do you think? Shang Junlin took the opportunity to put his arm around Shin Yu's waist and pulled him into his arms. He was satisfied. After finding out the reason, Shin Yu was overjoyed. He laughed and fell on Shang Junlin's shoulder. Your Majesty, you are too cute. Shin Yu remembered that when they were outside the palace, Shang Junlin liked the soft couch and liked to pull him along. Even when he was handling official business, he would let him sit next to him. It seemed that this was the reason. If your Majesty wants me to sit closer, just say so. Why do you want to change this soft couch? Besides, a big couch has a big advantage. If you are tired, you can lie on it. What do you think, your Majesty? If you don't want to exchange, then so be it. Shang Junlin didn't have to exchange. Shin Yu leaned on Shang Junlin's body with her eyes half closed. After all, her body was damaged. Shin Yu was a little sleepy recently, so she fell asleep in a short while. Shang Junlin lowered his head and looked at the young man who had fallen asleep in his arms. His eyes became softer and softer. Shang Junlin took a blanket from the side and put it on the young man. He hugged the young man with one hand and held a brush with the other. It was a quiet afternoon with only the occasional sound of flipping through booklets. The spring quarter examination was just around the corner, and the students had all reduced their outings. They stayed in their temporary lodgings and focused on preparing for the examination. The closer it was to the exam, the more impatient Jiang Huiqing became. He knocked on the door of the room next door. Brother Qingyu, are you busy? After a while, the door opened, and a man in a navy blue robe appeared behind the door. Come in. Jiang Huiqing walked in with his books. I haven't seen young Master Lin and young Master Yu for a few days. Aren't they also going to participate in the spring quarter examination? Why haven't I seen them? Jiang Huiqing placed his books beside He Qingyu. Why are you looking for them? He Qingyu poured a cup of tea for the two of them. To get together. After the examination, we're all over the place. I don't know if we can still get together. Jiang Huiqing picked up the teacup and took a sip. Good tea. If we pass the examination, we'll be able to see each other as officials in Dahuan. He Qingyu looked down at the tea leaves floating in the cup. The two of them were obviously people of high positions. It was unlikely that they were also examinees. Brother Qingyu is right. If fate wills it, we'll meet again. Let's not think about it anymore. I'm here today to ask Brother Qingyu for help. Jiang Huiqing opened his book and pointed at a few places. Here, here, and here. I've thought about it for a few days, but I still don't understand. He Qingyu leaned closer to take a look and shared his opinion. The two of them discussed for a while. Jiang Huiqing suddenly understood. So I was wrong. Huiqing's interpretation is quite novel. I wonder if it's convenient for me to ask who your teacher is. The two of them met on the way to the capital. One of them was from an aristocratic family, while the other was from a poor family. Unexpectedly, they had similar interests and decided to travel together after learning that their destination was the same. Jiang Huiqing was not guarded against people. It didn't take long for He Qingyu to figure out some basic information about Jiang Huiqing. In return for a favor, He Qingyu also told Jiang Huiqing about himself. The more they got to know each other, the more shocked He Qingyu was by Jiang Huiqing's knowledge. This was a young man who was not inferior to him. He knew his own situation. He was nurtured by the He family's resources. Jiang Huiqing was just an ordinary student from a poor family. The only person who could help Jiang Huiqing break through the barrier between a poor family and an aristocratic family was the person who taught him knowledge. My teacher. Jiang Huiqing suddenly fell silent. He Qingyu saw that in that instant, Jiang Huiqing's aura had undergone an earth-shattering change. In just a moment, he had turned back into the person he was familiar with. I'm just an ordinary old man. If I wasn't picked up by my teacher in the ice and snow, I might not be able to stand here now. He Qingyu did not expect that there was such a complicated story. He was stunned and said, Sorry, I didn't know. It's okay. Jiang Huiqing waved his hand carelessly, I didn't tell you this. Brother Qingyu, don't blame me for hiding it. His mood was disturbed. Jiang Huiqing picked up his books and said goodbye. He Qingyu watched him return to his room. He slowly lowered his gaze. He was too reckless today. Jiang Huiqing closed the door and sat on the bed. After a while, he rubbed his face. First, he had to pass the exam. Otherwise, he would not be able to do anything for his teacher. In order to give the students a good environment to prepare for the exam, the Yingxing Tower, which accepted many students, suspended all entertainment activities during this time. As the date approached, the streets were not as lively as before. The cold of spring had passed and the weather was gradually warming up. Shen Yu was still wearing thick clothes and the room was warm every day. His personal servants, Mu Shi and eunuch Meng, had changed into lighter clothes. Shang Junlin was the same. Does your majesty feel that the room is too hot? Shen Yu saw that Shang Junlin had changed into a light outer garment. The palace servants in the room were also wearing light clothes. He was the only one who was still wearing the thick winter robe. No, Shang Junlin put down his pen and reached out his hand. You, come here. Shen Yu walked over and put his hand on the man's hand. After a moment of dizziness, he sat on the man's lap. Shang Junlin touched Shen Yu's forehead. How do you feel? Are you cold? Shin Yu nodded honestly, a little. Shin Yu wouldn't have to suffer so much if it weren't for the second time. Shang Junlin put his arms around Shin Yu's waist and held Shin Yu's hands in his palms. The man's palms were very hot. As soon as Shin Yu was held, he felt the warmth spread from his fingertips. Jin will warm you. Shang Junlin whispered in Shin Yu's ear. Doesn't your majesty need to approve the memorials? Shin Yu glanced at the pile of memorials on the short table. There's no hurry. Shang Junlin held Shin Yu in his arms. The anger that rose from the memorials instantly subsided, they're all unimportant things. As he spoke, his warm breath sprayed on the side of his neck. Shin Yu felt a little itchy. He touched Shang Junlin with his head. Your Majesty, it's itchy. Shang Junlin moved his head a little, how about this? Shin Yu's head didn't move. Shang Junlin laughed, Gui Jun, you can't be too close, but you can't be too far away. Shin Yu would never admit that he was so difficult to please, why can't I be too far away? Jin can't stand it if you're too far away, okay? Shang Junlin said helplessly. You're right, Shin Yu muttered. He turned his head and said, Your Majesty seemed a little unhappy just now. What happened? It's about the invigilator and the examination before the examinees enter the venue. Shang Junlin attached great importance to every imperial examination. Some of these young examinees might be the future pillars of Deheng. Deheng urgently needed new blood. Which ministers did Your Majesty arrange to be in charge of this matter? Shin Yu remembered the imperial examination fraud case in his previous life. He couldn't let the same thing happen again in this life. It's the Ministry of Rights. Jing Yuan is in charge. Shang Junlin played with Shin Yu's warm fingers. Jing Yuan. Shin Yu rummaged through his memories about this imperial examination. When the fraud case was exposed, it shocked the world. Shin Yu even heard the news in King Yu's fief. He had a deep impression of this matter because of his trusted aide, Jiang Huiqing. Jiang Huiqing was innocently implicated. He escaped death several times and came to work under Shin Yu a few years later. He only said a few words about what happened that year. Shin Yu didn't have the interest to expose other people's scars, so he didn't ask in detail. As the chief examiner, Jing Yuan was removed from his position and investigated on the day of the incident. Later, it was found that he wasn't involved in the fraud case. However, he was also accused of incompetent supervision. The furious Deheng Emperor executed his entire family. It was also after this incident that Shang Junlin's ruthless reputation spread among the people. With the addition of one case after another, it became more and more deeply rooted in people's hearts. Later, when people mentioned Shang Junlin, the first thing that came to their minds wasn't his recovery of the country and the creation of a prosperous era, but his atrocious acts of killing people. Who assisted him? Too many officials were killed that year. Shin Yu couldn't immediately determine who was the one who did it. There were several. Shang Junlin read a list of names. Why is Shin Yu suddenly interested in this? I just want to know who made His Majesty unhappy. Since His Majesty is unhappy, he can just replace them. Does His Majesty lack them? Shang Junlin fiercely rubbed Shin Yu's face. It's really annoying that they keep quarreling. Yu is still the most considerate. Shin Yu couldn't directly intervene in this matter. If he wanted to deal with it in advance, he had to think of other ways. The next day, Shang Junlin made the final decision on the officials in charge of this imperial examination. This time, a new batch of officials was added. Shang Junlin's attitude was firm. Seeing that there was no room for negotiation, the officials quieted down. After telling Shin Yu the new arrangement, Shang Junlin stroked Shin Yu's hair. Yu, what are you worried about? Shin Yu shook his head. Shang Junlin was about to say something when Mu Shi came in with a letter. Young Master Jiang sent a letter. The person who delivered the letter said that the letter must be delivered to you as soon as possible. Why does he keep writing to you? Shang Junlin rubbed Shen Yu's shoulder like a big dog. How is it always? Including this time, there are only 5. Shen Yu asked Mu Shi to bring the letter over. Mu Shi looked straight ahead and handed the letter over with both hands. Shang Junlin took the letter before Shen Yu. What does he say this time? Shen Yu took the letter from Shang Junlin. He didn't avoid him and opened the letter. The two of them read it together. The first part of the letter was similar to the previous times. At the end, the topic changed. It talked about a strange incident. Recently, someone came to him and mysteriously told him that there was a way for him to win first place in the examination. Chapter 57. Shen Yu's smile slowly disappeared. He did not know if something like this had happened in his previous life and Jiang Huiqing had been implicated. However, in this life, those people had already set their sights on Jiang Huiqing. Jiang Huiqing had written the letter in a joking tone. It was obvious that he did not take this matter seriously. Shen Yu turned to look at Shang Junlin. The man's face was terrifyingly dark. Your Majesty. I did not know that there were people who had the guts to do this. No wonder they fought so hard over the invigilation of the exam. Your Majesty, don't be angry. We are not sure if this matter is true or not. Let the hidden dragon guards investigate first. Shen Yu comforted. Investigate. We must investigate thoroughly. Send someone to Jiang Huiqing first. We might be able to catch them red-handed. Shen Yu turned around and faced Shang Junlin. Since they took action, they must not only have their eyes on Jiang Huiqing. We must send someone to keep an eye on the other students, especially those who are similar to Jiang Huiqing. Do as Yu says. Shang Junlin held Shen Yu's wrist. His eyes were bloodthirsty and cold. I will write a letter back to Jiang Huiqing and ask him not to act rashly. Shen Yu pinched the letter. Other than you and me, I am not sure if anyone else has seen this letter. Shang Junlin thought for a while. We can rest assured. It depends on whether the person who delivered the letter to Jiang Huiqing is trustworthy. Don't worry too much. We are using another identity to communicate with Jiang Huiqing. Even if someone else saw this letter, they would not think that this letter would end up in our hands. Shen Yu said. That's right. It's all thanks to Yu this time. If it weren't for Yu and Jiang Huiqing's acquaintance, he wouldn't have told us about this. Perhaps we'll only know how daring these people are after the incident. Shang Junlin planted a kiss on Shen Yu's forehead. Yu is my lucky star. Seeing that Shang Junlin had calmed down, Shen Yu breathed a sigh of relief. Thanks to your Majesty for bringing me out of the palace. Actually, I feel that we should thank Prince Yu for this matter. Shen Yu deliberately adjusted the atmosphere. If it weren't for Prince Yu causing such a big commotion, we wouldn't have met Jiang Huiqing. If that's the case, I should thank Yu even more. If Yu hadn't suggested sending letters to all of King Yu's beauties, the Yingxing Tower incident wouldn't have happened. Thinking of this, Shang Junlin chuckled. That's right. Shen Yu's lips curled up. Everything was predestined. If any of them were missing, the outcome wouldn't have been achieved. After Shen Yu finished writing the letter, he first showed it to Shang Junlin. Then, he handed the letter to the hidden dragon guards and sent it to Jiang Huiqing. At this time, Jiang Huiqing was talking to Yu. You don't know how interesting that person is. He stopped me and said that I was the chosen one. As long as I listened to him, it wouldn't be a problem for me to become the champion. Am I such a stupid person? Unless he's the emperor himself. Oh, no, even if it's the emperor himself, he can't influence the results of the exam. In order to ensure absolute fairness, the person marking the exam papers couldn't see the names and identities of the candidates. Only after marking the papers could they see the results. When did he find you? After hearing Jiang Huiqing's words, He Qingyu's expression became serious. Stunned by He Qingyu's attitude, Jiang Huiqing said hesitantly, "Isn't that person a liar?" He Qingyu saw that Jiang Huiqing didn't realize the problem and explained patiently, "Think about it. Why would a liar cheat at such a sensitive time? Since he dared to say it, he might have some connections." Ha! Jiang Huiqing was stunned. After a while, he widened his eyes in disbelief. You're saying that he asked me to cheat? Lower your voice. He Qingyu stood up and covered his mouth. The walls have ears. Jiang Huiqing nodded and signaled that he wouldn't talk nonsense. He Qingyu then let go of him. What should I do now? Jiang Huiqing was stunned. If it was exposed, as someone who had interacted with that person, all his results would be cancelled. Don't worry, I'll think of a way. He Qingyu looked down and thought about what the He family could use to solve this problem. He Qingyu knew how important this exam was to Jiang Huiqing. He also knew that with Jiang Huiqing's ability, he would definitely get a good result if there were no accidents. However, something like this happened. Jiang Huiqing stood up anxiously. I also told young Master Yu about this. Will it bring him trouble? De Huan had always been strict about investigating fraud. After Shang Junlin took over, he had zero tolerance for fraud. If something really happened, he wouldn't be able to escape and young Master Yu would also be implicated. I shouldn't have written the letter. What did you say? He Qingyu stood up abruptly. Jiang Huiqing was shocked and whispered, I said I shouldn't have written the letter, not this sentence. He Qingyu interrupted him. I said I wrote the letter and told young Master Yu about this. I don't know if young Master Yu and the others will be implicated. Jiang Huiqing didn't understand why He Qingyu's reaction was so big, but he still repeated what he just said. He Qingyu suddenly sighed in relief. It's okay, they'll be fine. Why? Jiang Huiqing didn't understand. Because the identities of those two people were not simple. It was very likely that they were Her Majesty and Gue Jun themselves. He Qingyu answered in his heart. After the two sides met, He Qingyu used the He family's influence to investigate the capital. He couldn't find any information about those two people. It was as if they had appeared out of thin air. Combining the matters of Yingxing Tower and Sangqi Mountain, He Qingyu roughly came to a conclusion about those two people's identities. If it was as he thought, then everything that didn't make sense could be explained. Knock, knock. The sudden knocking on the door interrupted their thoughts. Jiang Huiqing stood up to open the door. There was an unfamiliar man standing at the door. Before he could ask, the man took out a letter and handed it to him. Young Master Yu said that you will understand after you read it. It was a reply from young Master Yu. Jiang Huiqing was slightly relieved. He took the letter and walked back into the house. Young Master Yu replied so quickly. Brother Qingyu, do you mind if I open it now? He Qingyu shook his head. Jiang Huiqing opened the envelope and took out the letter. The more he read, the more serious his expression became. After a while, he kept the letter. Young Master Yu and Brother Qingyu said the same thing. They asked me to be careful during this period and not to alert the enemy. They also asked me to focus on preparing for the exam and not to worry about anything else. There will be professionals to take care of it. Since young Master Yu said so, just do as he said. That person must have found more than one person. We have to be careful during this period. I know. The next period of time was calm. Perhaps it was because Jiang Huiqing knew some things, but he felt that it was the calm before the storm. The hidden dragon guards secretly infiltrated the student activity areas and gradually locked onto a few targets. Shang Junlin received feedback from the hidden dragon guards every day. Things were progressing in an orderly manner. King Yu's men also started to take action. In the imperial court, a minister stood up and requested for the matter to be settled quickly. Your Majesty, no matter what, King Yu is still a noble. We cannot keep him locked up in the secret prison. King Yu's matter involved too many women. To protect the reputation of these women, his actions were not announced and he was locked up under another name. Furthermore, official Fong did not announce what he found out. Other than those who were well informed or whose daughters were involved, most of the people did not know what King Yu had done. Official Ma was one of those who spoke up. Some time ago, someone had given him a lot of benefits. As long as he mentioned it in the imperial court, regardless of the outcome, he would be rewarded handsomely. Official Ma thought that it was just a matter of saying a few words. He was an imperial censor and his job was to advise the emperor. It was not a big deal for him to say a few words for King Yu. Oh. Then what do you think I should do? Shang Junlin supported his chin with one hand and looked down at the ministers. This. Official Ma was at a loss for words. He did not dare to directly ask Shang Junlin to release King Yu. Your Majesty, have you forgotten the promise you made to the late emperor? An old minister stood up, or did King Yu commit the crime of treason? The moment the old minister finished his words, the imperial court fell silent. Shang Junlin knocked on the armrest of the throne with an unreadable expression on his face. All of you also think that I should release King Yu. Some of the ministers who joined the imperial court later were confused. They looked at each other and did not dare to speak. A few of the ministers who were in the imperial court when the late emperor was still on the throne looked at each other and stood up. Your Majesty's words are of gold and jade. You should not change your words so easily. Even though Shang Junlin had expected this, he was still furious. Why did he value the imperial examination so much? It was to train new officials as soon as possible and replace these stubborn old officials. Shang Junlin glanced at the ministers one by one and stood up. All of you should know that I am in charge of Dahuan now. I have my own plans for King Yu. Ministers, you don't have to worry about it. Court is dismissed. With that, he flung his sleeves and left. The ministers looked at each other in confusion. This. What is going on? After a moment of silence, someone could not help but ask. Who knows what King Yu is thinking? Wouldn't it be better for him to leave peacefully? Why does he have to stay in the capital? His Majesty is really getting more and more disobedient. He has always been like that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have. The person who spoke suddenly stopped. Official Ma, why did you mention King Yu out of the blue? As if they had found an opportunity to attack, the ministers surrounded Official Ma. Official Ma wanted to cry but had no tears. He did not know that there would be such a big impact. Shang Junlin walked to the back of the hall and saw the young man standing by the window. He paused. The young man was wearing white clothes with a light blue gauze outer garment. His long hair was not tied up and was gently draped behind his back. He looked like an elegant young master. Why is Yu here? Shen Yu's range of activities in the palace was fixed in Yuzhang Palace. This was the first time Shang Junlin saw him come to the main hall of the court to find him. Hearing the sound, Shen Yu turned around. I came to see if His Majesty was bullied. Shen Yu came very early. He could hear the movements in the front of the hall from the back of the hall. He heard the ministers using the former emperor to pressure Shang Junlin. He also heard Shang Junlin's angry voice. However, he also knew that all of this was part of Shang Junlin's plan. He wanted to fish out the backup plan left by the former emperor for King Yu. When the beauty smiled, it was like a flower blooming in the clouds. Shang Junlin did not have the mind to think about the ministers. He walked quickly to Shen Yu's side. If I was bullied, what would you do? What does your majesty want me to do? Go to the front of the hall and scold them. Shen Yu raised his eyebrows. No, how can a Yu's mouth be used to scold people? Wouldn't it be too convenient for them? Shang Junlin leaned closer and said with a hidden meaning. A Yu only needs to comfort me. Chapter 58. Shen Yu was speechless. Your Majesty, how do you want me to comfort you? What do you think, a Yu? Shang Junlin moved closer to him. Shen Yu patted Shang Junlin's lowered head. All right. Your Majesty, don't be angry. These people are not worthy of your Majesty's anger. After that, Shen Yu slowly withdrew his hand. Is this how you comfort me? Shang Junlin laughed involuntarily. A Yu knows that's not what I mean. Shen Yu widened his eyes and revealed an innocent expression. If your Majesty doesn't tell me, how would I know what kind of comfort your Majesty wants? Keep pretending. The spring examination is about to end. Let's see what excuses you can use to fool me. Shang Junlin straightened his body and walked to the side with his hands behind his back. Your Majesty, why are you so sure that you will win? Shen Yu still did not understand. A Yu, have you forgotten who determines the final results of the court examination? Shang Junlin looked at him with a smile. Shen Yu naturally knew this. He understood the meaning behind Shang Junlin's words and widened his eyes in disbelief. Your Majesty, you won't abuse your power for personal gain, in order to win, right? If I can make a Yu take the initiative to approach me, what's wrong with abusing my power for personal gain? Shang Junlin raised his eyebrows. Shen Yu walked closer and carefully observed the man's expression. He found that he really didn't seem to be joking. It seemed that he really did think this way. Shen Yu suddenly felt speechless. Your Majesty, do you really need to do this? Shen Yu walked around him. If you can't convince me, Your Majesty, don't expect me to be willing. Ha, I'm just kidding. Shang Junlin grabbed the young man walking beside him and picked him up. How can I be stupid in this matter? A Yu is really worried. When the time comes, I'll ask someone to put down a curtain. You can read the papers with me. Caught off guard, Shen Yu was lifted up. He put his hands on the man's shoulders. Shang Junlin picked him up like a child. He was taller than Shang Junlin. Shen Yu looked down at the man. Your Majesty, don't tell me this was your plan from the beginning. You want me to accompany Your Majesty to invigilate the examination. Shang Junlin patted Shen Yu's back and did not deny it. Does you want to go? I'll think about it. Shen Yu did not immediately refuse. Shang Junlin's tone just now did not sound like he was joking. If Jiang Huiqing and He Qingyu's results were not too different, Shang Junlin might really be biased and let He Qingyu become the top scorer. Anyway, it didn't matter who was first or second to him. Just based on this matter, Shang Junlin really had the constitution of a fatuous ruler. Shang Junlin could be a tyrant for his own reasons, but Shen Yu would never allow Shang Junlin to become a fatuous ruler because of him. It's not easy to come here. I'll take you around. Shen Yu stood at the bottom of the stairs and refused to move. I'm just curious. I don't need to experience it myself. A Yu, don't worry. Is there any place in the palace that a Yu can't go? Ignoring Shen Yu's protest, Shang Junlin picked up Shen Yu and walked up the stairs. Shen Yu silently nestled in Shang Junlin's arms. Finally, he couldn't hold back his curiosity and looked down. Every time he went up the stairs, his field of vision widened. After walking up the 9 steps, Shen Yu suddenly had the illusion that there was someone kneeling down below. Shang Junlin bent down and put Shen Yu on the dragon throne. He stood below and asked, "You, how do you feel?" Shen Yu was silent for a moment and answered honestly, "I feel a little hard." The dragon throne was gorgeous, but it was also true that it was uncomfortable to sit on. The back of the throne was just a decoration. It was impossible to lean on it. Even if he leaned on it, he would only be scratched by the carved dragon. The armrests on both sides were wide and there was no place to lean on. Needless to say, there was no cushion for him to sit on. He could only sit up straight. It was fine for a while, but after a long time, Shen Yu felt that he couldn't stand it anymore. In this world, who doesn't want to sit on this throne? Only a Yu would dislike it for being uncomfortable. Shang Junlin rolled up his sleeves and sat beside Shen Yu. The dragon throne was big enough for 2 people to sit on. Shang Junlin sat on it, and Shen Yu leaned on him. "Even if everyone in the world wants to sit on this throne, no one is more suitable than your majesty." Eunuch Meng stood below. Only he knew how shocked he was. He knew that his majesty valued Shen Yu very much and almost spoiled him to the heavens. But he never expected that just because of Shen Yu's curiosity, he would personally put Shen Yu on that throne. Sitting on this throne, he felt not only the power, but also the responsibility of shouldering the entire Daheng country, as well as endless loneliness. Shen Yu sat for a while and couldn't sit still anymore. Shang Junlin didn't stop him this time, and the 2 walked down the stairs. "Your Majesty, aren't you afraid that I will also have thoughts about that throne?" Shen Yu was curious. Monstrous power was at hand. How many people could resist such a temptation? If a Yu wants it, then what's the harm in giving it to a Yu? Shang Junlin stroked Shen Yu's hair on the temples. "But a Yu, if you want the throne, you have to accept the throne. There can be no one else." The man's eyes darkened. "Otherwise, if I can let a Yu sit on that throne, I can also make it so that a Yu will never be able to touch that throne." "How can the throne be better than your majesty?" "It's better to let your majesty worry about the affairs of the world." "I only want your majesty." Shen Yu looked up at Shang Junlin's eyes. "The world is your majesty's, and your majesty is mine." He didn't know what his current feelings for Shang Junlin were, but he knew that he didn't want to change the current situation. "A Yu will always be mine." Shang Junlin held him in his arms with satisfaction. It wasn't the "I" of the emperor, but the "I" that represented Shang Junlin. The imperial examination in spring was approaching day by day. The old forces in the imperial court were becoming more and more unstable because of the matter of Prince Yu. They couldn't figure out Shang Junlin's attitude. Their probing seemed to anger the emperor, but it didn't achieve any of the effects they wanted. Releasing Prince Yu was both a goal and a pretense. It was a collision between the old and the new forces. Shang Junlin sat calmly and waited for the group of people who were buried the deepest to make a move. Several ministers gathered together in private to discuss the emperor's thoughts. What does His Majesty want to do this time? When have we ever guessed His Majesty's thoughts? In the past, His Majesty was very tolerant of the vassals. This time, I don't know why, but he made a move one after another. Does he not intend to care about the blood ties? You're wrong about this. When has His Majesty cared about these things? It's not like everyone doesn't know how His Majesty ascended the throne. Did you forget just because he didn't do anything in these years? So His Majesty really wants to kill Prince Yu this time. I heard some gossip here. Do you know the noble who has been very favored recently? Before she entered the palace, it was said that she and Prince Yu had a relationship. The person who spoke gave a, "you all know," look. Based on how favored that person is, His Majesty can do anything to Prince Yu. The person who heard this gasped. So His Majesty is targeting Prince Yu on purpose. In an inconspicuous corner, someone quietly stood up and left. The person who spoke the truth quietly glanced over there and continued to speak. All kinds of things outside the palace didn't affect the inside. Shin Yu lived a leisurely life. He didn't need to drink the extremely bitter medicine anymore. His mood became more and more relaxed. Because of the previous incident, Jiang Huiqing wrote letters more frequently. Occasionally, there would be a few letters from He Qingyu. They were all about their recent discoveries. Shin Yu simply chose a hidden dragon guard to be in charge of this matter. With the cooperation of both sides, they had already found a lot of useful clues. As long as they found the mastermind, they could directly arrest him. Shin Yu turned over and half lay on Shang Junlin's chest. I hope this incident won't affect the exam. Shang Junlin hooked Shin Yu's hair. Those who have close contact with those people will be investigated thoroughly before deciding whether to participate in the exam. In fact, it will save a lot of effort if all of them are not allowed to enter the exam hall. Shin Yu looked down. Then won't you definitely lose? Shang Junlin chuckled. Or does you want to lose to me? I welcome him. Chapter 59. Shin Yu nudged Shang Junlin with his head. I'm talking to Her Majesty about serious matters. I know, Shang Junlin touched Shin Yu's forehead. We discovered it early this time, so it's not difficult to investigate. Those who participated in it will be disqualified. You, don't worry. I've already made adjustments to the questions this time, so there won't be any problems. Shang Junlin knew that someone wanted to tamper with the imperial examinations, so how could he sit still and wait for his death? He had already made adjustments to the questions that needed to be changed. In order to prevent the new questions from being leaked, those who participated in the revision of the questions had to live in the manner that he arranged for them. The manor was heavily guarded, so if they wanted to spread the news to the outside world, they would be exposed first. Shin Yu nodded and began to talk about what Jiang Huiqing and the others had discovered during this period of time. Jiang Huiqing wrote in the letter that those people had a clear goal. Most of them were from humble families. A few who were close to Jiang Huiqing were also targeted. After he told them about it, he found that a few of them were targeted. Shin Yu thought, they saw that Her Majesty likes to use officials from humble families, so they planned to use their own people first. Shang Junlin, no matter whether they succeed or not, these people will leave evidence that can be used against them. If they want to continue their official career, they can only work for the person behind the scenes. Shin Yu, that's right. And the higher those people go in the future, the more beneficial it will be for the person behind the scenes. It's such a good deal. They can effortlessly turn these people into their own people. But Shin Yu looked down to hide the coldness in his eyes. Whether it was in his previous life or this time, that person's goal would not succeed. Yingxing Tower. As the exam day approached, the number of people in the building decreased. The students stayed in their own places and made their final preparations. Jiang Huiqing's impetuous heart gradually calmed down. After talking with young Master Yu, he roughly knew that young Master Lin and young Master Yu's background was not simple. They were most likely not the candidates this time. Brother Qingyu is as calm as ever. Jiang Huiqing walked over from the window. Having known He Qingyu for so long, Jiang Huiqing had never seen He Qingyu's expression change. The surrounding students were getting more and more nervous. Only He Qingyu remained the same. Even he himself had been anxious some time ago, but his state of mind had only slowly recovered in the past 2 days. It's just an exam. Didn't Huiqing perform as usual? He Qingyu smiled faintly. Jiang Huiqing patted his chest and said, although I don't show it on my face, what happened a while ago really scared me. I've been feeling uneasy for a few days now. I don't know if Brother Qingyu has noticed, but those people's targets seem to be poor students. After these days of observation, Jiang Huiqing came to this conclusion. He Qingyu nodded. Yes, I did. I've asked the students from the other clans, but they haven't encountered anything similar. It seems that their goal is very clear. Jiang Huiqing rubbed his chin. They're picking people according to His Majesty's preferences. When the previous emperor was on the throne, the poor were suppressed by the aristocratic families to the point that they almost had no place to stand. After the current emperor ascended the throne, a group of poor officials were slowly raised. The exam is about to start. I don't know if this matter can be completely resolved before it starts. Under everyone's anticipation, the day of the exam finally arrived. In the morning, the students brought their tools. After checking that there were no mistakes, they entered the exam room one by one. Everyone's attention was on the exam itself. No one noticed that a small number of students were quietly taken away before they entered the exam room. After the students entered the exam room, a well-prepared arrest operation was secretly carried out. The evidence was conclusive. Without giving anyone any chance to resist, several inconspicuous people were quietly taken away. As the weather warmed up, the flowers in the garden bloomed, especially in Yuzhang Palace. Knowing that Xinyu liked flowers and plants, Shang Junlin sent people to bring over many rare flowers and plants. Recently, a top-quality ink orchid was presented. Shang Junlin didn't even think and had people send it to Yuzhang Palace. Eunuch Meng personally led people to move it. He finally understood that if there was something good, it should be directly sent to Yuzhang Palace. Didn't he see that His Majesty was only staying overnight in Yuzhang Palace? Since Xinyu entered the palace, Shang Junlin almost never returned to the emperor's bedroom. Even Eunuch Meng had a room to rest in Yuzhang Palace. His Majesty specially sent this slave to send this. See if you like it. Eunuch Meng lifted the red silk covering the top. Layers of blooming petals came into view. Xinyu's eyes lit up. Where did His Majesty get such a top-quality ink orchid? It was sent by the servants. It just arrived in the palace today. His Majesty sent this slave to send it to you. His Majesty is considerate. Xinyu found a suitable place for the ink orchid to grow and asked the palace servants to move the ink orchid there. Eunuch Meng was ready to leave after sending the things. Xinyu stopped him. I wonder if Eunuch Meng can change the head eunuch of Yuzhang Palace. Eunuch Meng paused. Why does His Majesty suddenly want to change people? The palace servants of Yuzhang Palace were all arranged by Shang Junlin. At that time, Xinyu had just entered the palace. Shang Junlin's requirement was that people with clean backgrounds should not cause trouble. Eunuch Meng also let his subordinates do the selection. Later, Xinyu was favored, and countless people regretted not being able to work in Yuzhang Palace. Eunuch Meng also regretted it. If he knew that Yuzhang Palace could be so popular because of Xinyu, he would have arranged a position for his people. However, the matter was a foregone conclusion. It was useless to regret it. Xinyu had never asked about the palace servants. Suddenly, he said that he wanted to change people. First, pick a group of people according to my requirements. After all, if you want to live for a long time, the people you use naturally need to be handy. Xinyu stated his requirements. Loyal, not gossiping, adaptable, understanding, and easy to use. As for the rest, I will have to trouble Eunuch Meng to put more effort into it. His Majesty is too kind. His Majesty can rest assured that this slave will do well for His Majesty. Eunuch Meng respectfully responded. Those who could serve in front of the emperor were all experienced people. Eunuch Meng could tell that the previous head eunuch had made His Majesty unhappy. Eunuch Meng couldn't figure it out. His Majesty was already a rare master who was easy to serve. What did the head eunuch of Yuzhang Palace do to make His Majesty want to change people? And, when His Majesty said that he wanted to live for a long time, did he mean that he didn't plan to live for a long time, so everything was dispensable? Eunuch Meng lowered his eyes to hide the deep thought in his eyes. He began to think about the candidates that met Shin Yu's requirements. "And I'm very relieved when you do things." After explaining, Shin Yu didn't intend to care about this matter. Eunuch Meng returned to Shang Junlin to report. After he finished talking about Shin Yu's reaction, he hesitated for a while and then told him that Shin Yu wanted to change people. Shang Junlin thought about the head eunuch of Yuzhang Palace. He didn't have much of an impression. When he was in Yuzhang Palace, Eunuch Meng had always been the one who served him. Shin Yu didn't like people to serve him. Other than Mu Shi, there were few other palace servants who served him. Did His Majesty say the reason? From what Shang Junlin knew about Shin Yu, he wasn't a person who spoke with a goal in mind. No, Eunuch Meng shook his head. He only said that he didn't like to use him. Shang Junlin, go investigate that head eunuch. If His Majesty wants to change people, then let him do it. This time, choose the people carefully. Eunuch Meng, this slave understands. Shang Junlin, after you choose the people, let me have a look first. Don't find someone who will make His Majesty worry. Eunuch Meng, yes. Shin Yu watered Mo Lan with some water and put down his rolled-up sleeves. He saw Shang Junlin walk in. Your Majesty, are you done with your work? Shang Junlin took a handkerchief from the side and wiped Shin Yu's hands. Why don't you let the servants do these things? Of course, the flowers sent by Your Majesty have to be taken care of. Otherwise, what if Your Majesty doesn't like Junling one day? Junling was sent by Imperial Physician Gu. Because it was difficult to take care of, Shin Yu had always taken care of it personally. Shang Junlin had been jealous of it several times. You even know how to tease me. Shang Junlin poked Shin Yu's forehead. Shin Yu dodged to the side. Your Majesty, why don't you let others talk about what you did? Okay, you can say whatever you want. Shang Junlin held Shin Yu's hand and led him to the soft couch to sit down. Why do you suddenly want to change people to serve you? Eunuch Meng has announced to Your Majesty. Shin Yu was not surprised that Eunuch Meng would tell Shang Junlin about this matter. He told Eunuch Meng because he had the intention of using Eunuch Meng to tell Shang Junlin about this matter. Shin Yu, it's not like you don't know how much I care about your matters. How would Meng Chang dare to hide it? It was Mu Shi who found out. He took advantage of his position as the eunuch in charge of Yuzhang Palace and bullied the palace maids in the palace. He didn't dare to touch the people in Yuzhang Palace, so he touched the people in other palaces. Shin Yu's face was full of disgust. I have already asked Mu Shi to make a list of the palace maids who were bullied. If it wasn't for a palace maid who had a strong temper and made a fuss, who knows how long this matter would have been hidden. Shang Junlin's aura became heavy. Who gave him the courage to run amok? Maybe it's because Your Majesty usually doesn't care about the palace maid's matters, so he thinks he can be unscrupulous because he is the eunuch in charge of Yuzhang Palace. When Shin Yu first found out, he almost killed him directly. It was Mu Shi who stopped him. Young master, this kind of thing is actually not uncommon in the palace. This time, Eunuch Li was dealt with. Next time, there will be Eunuch Xiao and Eunuch Sunday. We must put an end to this phenomenon. We must make them not dare to do it even if they want to. Mu Shi said. The more beautiful the surface, the easier it was to hide filth. When the water was too clear, there would be no fish. Shin Yu was not a young master who lived in a castle in the sky. He had seen the dark side of the world many times. He knew that in the palace, which was the center of power in Dahuan, no matter how shocking it was not surprising. Let Meng Chang deal with it. Shin Yu reached out and pressed his hand against Shang Junlin's lips. No, since it's a crime committed by someone from Yuzhang Palace, I should be the one to deal with this matter. To dare do such a thing under my nose, I want to see who gave him the guts. For the first time, Shen Yu showed such a fierce side in front of Shang Junlin. The beauty's temperament was like ice, and there was a biting chill between his eyebrows. Shang Junlin looked at him quietly and felt his heart beating faster and faster. Usually, Shen Yu was gentle and harmless. Occasionally, he would show his small fangs. He did not look like a predator, but more like a cub that had not grown up yet. He was less intimidating. But now, Shen Yu was different. A dangerous aura seeped out from inside, with a breathtaking beauty. At a certain moment, Shang Junlin felt that this was the real Shen Yu. Full of aggression, danger, and charm. He almost could not move his eyes away. Seeing that Shang Junlin did not respond for a long time, Shen Yu looked up in confusion. Your Majesty, what are you thinking about? I'm thinking. A Yu is so beautiful. His voice was as low as a whisper. He wanted to pull her into his arms and kiss her fiercely, marking her as his from the inside out. Chapter 60. Feeling Shang Junlin's strong aggressive aura, Shen Yu held his breath. He was even a little confused. Did he say something? How did he suddenly make Shang Junlin so interested? After thinking about it, Shen Yu stepped back a little. No matter what the reason was, it was better for him to stay away from Shang Junlin, who was emitting a dangerous aura. Sensing his small movements, Shang Junlin blocked his way with one hand behind him. You, why are you hiding? Shen Yu played dumb. What did your Majesty say? Shang Junlin didn't want to make things difficult for him, so he restrained his aura. What does Yu plan to do? It was unknown when Shang Junlin changed the way he addressed Shen Yu from Gui Jun to Yu. Shen Yu gradually got used to it. Change the eunuch in charge of Yuzhang Palace first, then we'll talk. We'll do as Yu says. I'll choose the newcomer first. I won't allow the same thing to happen a second time. This time, the eunuch in charge of Yuzhang Palace got into trouble. In the end, it was his fault for not paying attention to him. If he had carefully checked the eunuch before appointing him, the current situation wouldn't have happened. Thank you, Your Majesty. Shen Yu narrowed his eyes. He always knew that a dike of 1,000 miles could collapse because of an ant's nest. He didn't expect the people who worked under him to be flawless, but he couldn't tolerate people who had no bottom line. Since he was going to do it, Shen Yu ordered Mu Shi to check all the people in Yuzhang Palace. In the past, he didn't think that he would live in Yuzhang Palace for a long time. He didn't have high requirements for the palace servants who served him, and he wouldn't send them to do anything urgent. Usually, he was easy to talk to, which encouraged some people's ambitions. Shen Yu was favored, so Yuzhang Palace also rose. The palace servants who served in Yuzhang Palace were much more prestigious than those in other places. The rules of survival in the palace had always been like this. Shen Yu didn't plan to change anything, but he didn't want to see someone use his name to make trouble. Eunuch Meng quickly selected a candidate and immediately showed it to Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin's gaze swept across the name list one by one. When he saw a certain name, he paused and looked up with a faint smile. If I remember correctly, this Meng Yuan is your godson, right? Yes, yes. Eunuch Meng didn't dare to lie. This servant found these people according to your request. This servant has seen Meng Yuan since he was young. This servant knows his character better than anyone else. This servant boldly added his name to the list. After he finished speaking, Eunuch Meng was a little nervous and added, I added Meng Yuan's name because I had selfish motives. Firstly, I know his background. Secondly, Your Highness is a master who is easy to serve. It is Meng Yuan's fortune to be able to serve Your Highness. Shang Junlin stroked the edge of the name list with uncertainty in his eyes. Eunuch Meng's heart jumped even higher. He smiled bitterly in his heart. He really didn't want to let go of this opportunity, so he boldly indulged his selfish motives. This servant knows that you value this godson very much. However, you can't go too far. This servant has looked at the name list. They all meet your highness's requirements. Send them to your highness. As for who can stay, it will be up to your highness. Shang Junlin glanced at Eunuch Meng lightly and threw the name list into his arms. This servant thanks your majesty for your grace. Eunuch Meng hugged the scroll. The big stone in his heart finally fell to the ground. Go. Shang Junlin waved his hand. Yes. Eunuch Meng hugged the scroll, bowed, and left. Eunuch Meng didn't dare to delay. He brought the selected people to Yuzhang Palace. Shen Yu was taking care of the mo lawn that Shang Junlin sent. He didn't know how he took care of this flower. Even though the flowering period was over, it still bloomed very well. Young master, Eunuch Meng has brought people here. Mu Shi stepped forward to clean Shen Yu's hands. So soon. Shen Yu cleaned his hands and took a handkerchief to dry them. Send people to the main hall. Mu Shi received the order and left. Shen Yu changed his outer robe and went out. When Shen Yu arrived, Eunuch Meng was already waiting in the main hall with people. Shen Yu walked to the main seat and sat down. Eunuch Meng introduced the people that he brought to Shen Yu one by one. Eunuch Meng, thank you for your trouble. Eunuch Meng smiled kindly. Your Highness is too kind. Please take a look and see if there are any satisfactory candidates. If none of them are suitable, this servant will bring another batch. No need to be so troublesome. These people already meet my requirements. Shen Yu pointed at a few people. These people will stay first. The rest of you can leave. The other people bowed and respectfully left. Meng Yuan was among the people that Shen Yu left. Eunuch Meng's smile deepened. Shen Yu tested the remaining people and finally kept Meng Yuan. Later, Shang Junlin came over. Why did you choose Meng Yuan? Shang Junlin hugged Shen Yu and walked to the side of the couch to sit down. Does you know the relationship between Meng Yuan and Meng Chang? Shen Yu shook his head. What's the relationship between them? I chose Meng Yuan because I like his style of doing things. Yuzhang Palace is too eye-catching. The people under it must be managed by someone reliable. That's Meng Chang's godson. He's very scheming. He knew that Yuzhang Palace was a good place to go, so he sent his godson here. Eunuch Meng really has good taste. Shen Yu leaned on the man's shoulder. It seems that Her Majesty really likes me. Even the favorite of the Emperor thinks that working in my palace is promising. Shang Junlin thought that Shen Yu would be dissatisfied. He didn't expect him to have such a reaction. Shen thought you would be angry. What's there to be angry about? Shen Yu smiled. Her Majesty saw the person first. If there was a problem, Her Majesty wouldn't send the person to me, right? A Yu's mouth is better than anyone else. Shang Junlin pinched Shen Yu's chin and turned it to face him. His thumb rubbed Shen Yu's lips. Shen Yu blinked. I'm just telling the truth. Why is Her Majesty looking at me like this? Zhen is thinking, did you have a candidate in mind from the beginning? Did you go around in a big circle just to let Meng Yuan take the initiative to come to Yuzhang Palace? Shang Junlin's eyes darkened. It wasn't hard to guess. Otherwise, as a noble, Shen Yu could have any eunuch he wanted. He went around in such a big circle. It was just that the person's identity was different, so it wasn't easy to mention it. Shen Yu pretended to be confused. He blinked innocently. What are you talking about, Your Majesty? Little fox. Shang Junlin leaned closer and kissed the young man's eyes. Shen Yu was startled by the sudden breath. He didn't have time to react before he felt a warm touch on his eyes. The warm touch fell on his eyelids. The words he didn't have time to say were completely forgotten. Looking at Shen Yu's dazed expression, Shang Junlin's eyes became deeper and deeper. His lips gradually moved down. The moment his lips were about to touch, Eunuch Meng's voice sounded from outside the screen. Her Majesty, Fong Darren requests an audience. As if waking up from a dream, Shen Yu suddenly broke free and said uncomfortably, "Since your Majesty has something to do, you can go and do it first." Shang Junlin secretly sighed that he missed a good opportunity. He rubbed Shen Yu's head and got up to leave. Shen Yu sat on the soft couch for a while. The confusion in his eyes gradually faded. Candidates were not allowed to leave the examination hall during the examination period. They ate and lived in the examination hall. They didn't know that in just a few days, the outside world was in chaos. Shang Junlin's people finally found clues and caught the mastermind behind the scenes. In the imperial court, Fong Darren reported what he found in a deep voice. Finally, he bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, please make a decision." There was an uproar. How is this possible? This is a matter that shakes the foundation of the country. Could Fong Darren be mistaken? Fong Darren glared at him. "Do you think I would joke about this? I didn't mean that." The person who spoke shut his mouth embarrassedly. "The evidence is conclusive. Your Majesty, please punish him severely." Looking at the righteous Fong Darren, the ministers felt as if they had returned to the day when Censor Zhang was implicated. Amidst the whispers, Shang Junlin's cold voice sounded. "Ministers, please take a look at Fong Darren's evidence before you speak." The eunuch in front of the imperial court held up the scroll and read it aloud. From how to get the exam questions to how to order people to get close to the students and lure them into the trap, everything was explained clearly. After a moment of silence, Shang Junlin slowly opened his mouth. "Does the Grand Commandant have anything to say to defend yourself?" The Grand Commandant couldn't argue with the evidence. He knelt down dejectedly. "I know my mistake." The Grand Commandant was an old minister from the previous dynasty. He didn't suffer any losses during the change of power because he chose sides in time. On the contrary, when Shang Junlin ascended the throne, he became an important minister and was active until now. Shang Junlin stood up from the dragon throne and looked down emotionlessly. "Grand Commandant, don't be in a hurry to admit your guilt. Tell me, what benefits did the previous emperor give you that you are still willing to work for him after more than 10 years? "I wouldn't dare." The Grand Commandant's heart skipped a beat. "Why wouldn't you dare? Do you regret that you didn't kill me on the battlefield so that King Yu could take the throne?" Shang Junlin's words caused an uproar. No one would have thought that an attempted cheating case would involve the secrets of the past. Not long after Shang Junlin ascended the throne, he was seriously injured in a battle. However, before he recovered, the news was kept secret. Not many people knew about it, and even fewer people knew about it. "Your Majesty, I am innocent. I was possessed and tampered with the imperial examinations. However, I really didn't do what Your Majesty said." The Grand Commandant was shocked. The first incident was enough to convict his entire family. If the second incident was added, what's more, he only wanted to gain a foothold in the imperial court. He didn't have the intention or the ability to break through the heavy guards and attack Shang Junlin. Looking at the Grand Commandant who was trembling like a leaf, Shang Junlin's mouth faintly curved up. Of course, he knew that the Grand Commandant didn't do it. He deliberately said it so that he could pass the information to someone through the spies in the imperial court. He knew that what happened that year wasn't an accident, and he would investigate it thoroughly. The Grand Commandant was taken away with a pale face. After the court was dismissed, only Lord Fong stayed. The two talked in the imperial study for the whole afternoon. After Lord Fong left, the Supreme Court began to deal with the Grand Commandant's case. Shen Yu leaned against Shang Junlin's chest through his clothes. So, Your Majesty was lying to me last time. This injury wasn't left when you were young. It's my fault. Shang Junlin smiled bitterly. He told Shen Yu about what happened in the imperial court today. He didn't expect Shen Yu to focus on this. Someone actually attacked Your Majesty after you ascended the throne. Shen Yu thought for a while and felt that it wasn't strange. Whether it was in the previous life or this life, King Yu had always been eyeing the throne. Originally, Shen Yu thought that King Yu was the only one who coveted the throne. Now, it seemed that it was far from the case. Other than those who coveted the throne on the surface, there were many people who secretly coveted it. It was just that they didn't dare to show it because of Shang Junlin's power. Shen Yu pressed the wound according to his memory. Your Majesty, does it hurt? Shang Junlin held Shen Yu's hand on his chest. Does your heart ache?